During dinner that night, I watched my son drop his fork 3 times. He couldn't look me in the eye. He couldn't even look at the cup of coffee his wife had just placed in front of me. "Go ahead, Dad. It's still your favorite." She smiled warmly. Just as I raised the cup to my lips, my phone vibrated. It was a text message from my grandson's girlfriend. After reading it, I slowly looked up. My son had gone pale. But his wife, she was still smiling as if nothing had happened. I'm glad you're here for this one. Before we dive in, drop a quick comment and tell me, what are you doing while listening? Driving, cooking, working, or just winding down for the night? I read every single one. Quick note, this story includes some fictional elements added for storytelling and reflection. What truly matters is the message it carries. The question came on a Tuesday morning in November, wrapped in the kind of innocent small talk that makes you miss the blade until you're already bleeding. Actually, let me back up. Start from the Monday before. My name is Lawrence Ramsey, 68 years old, retired history teacher who spent 38 years at Jefferson High School in Milwaukee before I hung up my chalk 5 years ago. My wife Elaine passed 3 years back, cancer quick and merciless. Since then, it's been me, this house, and a morning routine that could set your watch by. That Monday morning in early November, I woke at 6:30 like always. The house was quiet in that particular way. Only people who live alone understand not peaceful, exactly more like waiting. I made my way downstairs to the kitchen, flipped on the light, and started the coffee maker. The smell of brewing Folgers filled the small space, rich and familiar. Through the window over the sink, weak autumn sunlight filtered through the neighbor's oak tree, casting long shadows across my backyard. I poured my first cup at 7:15, black, no sugar. Elaine used to say I drank it like punishment. I told her I drank it like a man who taught teenagers for nearly 4 decades. You learn to appreciate bitter things. The kitchen was warm. The coffee was good. I stood at the window watching a squirrel bury something in the yard, and I thought about grading papers in this same spot for 38 years, about Elaine humming while she made breakfast, about how a house can feel both empty and full of ghosts at the same time. That morning felt like every other Monday. It wasn't. The knock came at 7:45. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, Wanda Travers stood on my porch with that friendly smile she'd been wearing for the 12 years she'd lived next door. 65 years old, gray hair, she kept short, always dressed like she might need to run errands at a moment's notice. We had the easy relationship that comes from proximity and mutual respect. She borrowed my ladder, I borrowed her hedge trimmer, we talked about weather and property taxes and never got too personal. "Morning, Lawrence," she said, her breath making small clouds in the November cold. "Saw your light on. Got a minute?" "Of course." "Coffee?" No, I'm on my way to the store. Just wanted to ask if everything turned out all right." I blinked. "Everything with whatever your daughter-in-law was planning." Wanda smiled wider. "She stopped by back in September, must have been 2 months ago now. Asked about your schedule. When you usually get up when you're home during the day, your routines. Said she was planning something special for you and wanted to make sure she timed it right." My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. "She asked you about my schedule?" "Well, yes." Wanda's smile flickered slightly, sensing something in my tone. "I thought it was sweet, honestly. A daughter-in-law taking the time to plan a surprise for her father-in-law. She was very specific about it, wanted to know when you'd definitely be home alone." I kept my face neutral. 38 years teaching high school teaches you many things. One of them is how to hide what you're thinking while your mind races. "That was thoughtful of Francine," I said, voice even. "When exactly did she stop by?" "Oh, let me think. Early September, maybe the first week. I remember because I'd just gotten my fall mums planted." Wanda tilted her head. "She never mentioned it to you." "Must have slipped her mind." "Well, I'm sure whatever she's planning will be lovely. Your son's lucky to have found such a caring woman." I smiled, thanked her, closed the door. Stood there with my back against it, coffee cup still in my hand, while something cold that had nothing to do with November settled in my chest. How many times had I caught students lying to my face by watching their hands, their eyes, the way they stood when they thought they were safe? How many times had I smiled and nodded while a kid spun me a story about why their homework was late, and I just knew from 38 years of practice that they were feeding me a line. You develop instincts. You learn to read what people don't say. Francine asked my neighbor about my schedule. Not me, my neighbor. In September, 2 months ago, I walked back to the kitchen, set my cup down on the counter. looked out the window at that same backyard, same oak tree, same morning light. But something had shifted. The coffee tasted different now, metallic almost. If Francine wanted to plan a surprise for me, why not just ask me directly? Why interrogate my neighbor about when I'd be home alone? Why be so specific about my routines, my vulnerabilities, my schedule? You teach American history for nearly 4 decades. You learn one thing above all people: rarely do something without a reason. Every action has a motive. Every question has a purpose. When a student asks if you'll be in your classroom after school alone, they're not making conversation, they're planning. Francine had been planning something since September, something that required knowing exactly when I would be home, alone, vulnerable, and she never mentioned it. Not once in 2 months. No surprise materialized. No gift appeared. Just silence. I stood at that kitchen window, the Milwaukee autumn cold seeping through the glass, my hand wrapped around a coffee cup that had gone lukewarm. The squirrel was gone. The yard was empty. The house was quiet in that waiting way it always was these days. My daughter-in-law had been gathering intelligence about my daily life, methodically, secretly, 2 months ago. Why? I have taught history for 38 years. I've taught students about wars that started with small questions about murders disguised as accidents, about plans that took months to execute. I've taught them that patterns matter, that details matter, that when someone needs to know when you're alone and vulnerable, you should ask yourself why they need to know. And the first thing history taught me, the very first lesson that echoes through every war, every betrayal, every tragedy I ever covered in that classroom is this: nothing happens by accident. I set down my coffee cup, and I started paying attention. My son stopped looking me in the eye about 6 months ago, but I didn't understand why until that Tuesday afternoon when he sat in my living room and lied to my face. Bryce arrived at 3:30. I'd been watching the clock since Wanda's visit, cataloging everything with the methodical attention I used to bring to lesson planning. My son, 45 now, though the gray at his temples made him look older, walked through my door with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. He'd always been a handsome kid, took after Elaine's side of the family, but something about him looked hollowed out now, worn thin. "Hey, Dad." He hugged me quick and stiff, nothing like the easy embraces we used to share. "Sorry, it's been a few weeks. Work's been crazy." No apology needed. I gestured to the old armchair, the one he'd claimed as his spot since he was a teenager. "Sit. Want coffee?" "No, I'm good." He sat, but his posture was all wrong, perched on the edge like he might need to run. His phone came out immediately, placed on his thigh. His right index finger started tapping against the armrest. Tap, tap, tap. I'd seen that exact gesture 1,000 times. Junior year, when Marcus Webb sat in my classroom trying to explain why he hadn't turned in his Civil War essay. Senior year, when Sarah Callahan swore she hadn't cheated on the final. The finger tap was fear. Pure, distilled fear dressed up as casualness. "How's the real estate business treating you?" I asked, settling into my own chair across from him. "Fine, Dad, everything's fine." His eyes flickered to his phone, back to the wall behind my head, never to my face. "Just busy. You know how it is." "I do know." I kept my voice gentle. 38 years teaching high school. You learn to read people. His finger tapped faster. "The market's good right now, though, isn't it?" I pressed. "Friend of mine mentioned property values are up in Milwaukee." Yeah, it's good." He checked his phone again. Nothing on the screen I could see from where I sat. He was just looking for an escape route. "Listen, Dad, I can't stay long. Francine's got dinner planned and—" "How is Francine—" The tapping stopped, just for a second, then resumed double time. "She's great. Good. Really good. She hasn't stopped by in a while. She's been busy too, work stuff. 38 years in a classroom teaches you to read the body, not the mouth." Bryce's finger tapped against the armrest like a student caught cheating, the same restless energy, the same desperate search for an exit. His eyes found everything in that room except my face. I had seen that exact combination 1,000 times. It never meant anything good. Bryce was lying. My son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike and helped with algebra homework and watched graduate with honors, was sitting in my living room lying to me about something that made his hands shake. And he couldn't look at me. Wouldn't. His eyes stayed fixed on that spot on the wall, that safe middle distance where he didn't have to see my face. "Well," I said quietly, "tell her I said hello." He left 10 minutes later. Another stiff hug, more promises to visit soon, and then he was gone. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for a full 3 minutes before starting the engine, his head down, both hands gripping the steering wheel. I didn't know what he was afraid of, but I knew my son was terrified. Wednesday passed in a haze of attention. I watched everything. The mail, nothing unusual, the phone, no calls. I made my own meals, drank only water I poured myself, felt ridiculous for the paranoia, but couldn't shake Wanda's words. Francine had asked about my routines. Bryce was lying. Something was happening. I just didn't know what. Not until 11:07 p.m. Wednesday night. I was in bed reading a biography of Truman I'd been working through for weeks. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Text message. I picked it up expecting maybe a spam message or one of those emergency alerts. Liliana Whitfield's name filled the screen. The text came from Liliana Whitfield, 18 years old, a bright college freshman I'd known since she started dating my grandson 3 years ago. I'd helped her through her parents' messy divorce when she was 15, spent hours talking her through the anger and confusion. Smart girl. Serious. Not the type to send random texts at 11 at night. The message was 12 words. "Don't drink anything they give you for the next few days. I am serious. I am sorry if I am wrong." I read it 3 times. Then I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. The phone screen glowed in the darkness, those 12 words burning into my retinas like a brand. Don't drink anything they give you. They. Not Francine. Not Bryce. They. Plural. Conspiracy. Planning. I am serious. She was serious. Liliana Whitfield didn't dramatize, didn't exaggerate. 3 years I'd known that girl, and she'd never once cried. Wolf never sent a cryptic message as a joke. When she spoke, she meant every word. I am sorry if I am wrong. She wasn't sure, but she was scared enough to risk looking foolish. Scared enough to send a warning at 11 p.m. to an old man she barely knew outside family gatherings. Don't drink anything they give you. I got out of bed, walked downstairs to my office, found the old evaluation notebook I used to carry blank now for 5 years since retirement. Grabbed a pen, sat down at my desk in the dark house and opened to the first page. My hand was shaking slightly as I wrote, Wednesday, November 11th, 2023, 11:07 p.m. Received warning from Liliana Whitfield. Text message, don't drink anything they give you for the next few days. I am serious. I am sorry if I am wrong. Called twice. No answer. Cannot reach her. I stopped, stared at those words, then added one more line. That girl never speaks recklessly. In 3 years, not once. I sat there in the darkness, my old teacher's notebook open in front of me, and I understood with terrible crystalline clarity that Wanda's innocent comment and Bryce's lies and now Liliana's warning were all pieces of the same puzzle. Someone was planning to poison me, and my own family was involved. I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk until dawn, staring at that notebook entry, trying to make sense of a world where my family wanted me dead. The photo came through at 6:47 Thursday morning while my coffee was still too hot to drink, and I knew immediately that someone had forged my signature. My phone buzzed on the kitchen table. Another text from Liliana. No words, just an image. I tapped to open it. Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. Policy number ML88472019WI, $1 million. My name at the top, beneficiary Bryce Ramsey, son. I'd taken out that policy 5 years ago, right after Elaine died. Standard life insurance. Something to leave Bryce for funeral costs, medical bills, the house. Nothing unusual. Except I was looking at a rider I'd never seen before. Accelerated Death Benefit Rider, the heading read, added September 15th, 2023, 2 months ago, right when Francine had been asking Wanda about my routines. I zoomed in. The clause was buried in dense legal language. In the event the insured is diagnosed with a terminal illness with a life expectancy of 12 months or less as certified by a licensed physician, the beneficiary may elect to receive up to 80% of the death benefit value in advance. 80% of $1 million, $800,000. And there at the bottom, a signature, Lawrence J. Ramsey. That's my name, my policy number, my account from 2019. But that signature isn't mine. I've signed my name the same way for 68 years. The L loops high, the J barely crosses. This signature was careful. Studied. The L too short. The J crossing too deliberately. Someone had practiced my handwriting, added a rider to my policy, created a legal mechanism to withdraw most of my life insurance while I was still alive as long as a doctor certified I was dying. I stared at that forged signature. An accelerated death benefit rider. Someone added a clause that lets them withdraw the money early if I'm diagnosed with a terminal condition. Not just any terminal condition. One with 12 months or less to live. Specific. Planned. The person who did this knows insurance contracts very well. It is not my son. Bryce has never read an insurance policy in his life. He can barely manage his own taxes without calling me. This was someone else. Someone with expertise. Someone who understood exactly how to structure legal theft. I opened my notebook. Second entry. Thursday, November 12th, 2023. 6:47 a.m. Liliana sent photo of life insurance policy. Accelerated death benefit rider added September 15th, 2023. Signature forged. They need me certified terminally ill by a physician. They need me dying. They need it documented. I stopped writing, stared at that last sentence. They need it documented, which meant they needed a doctor. I have taught World War II history for 38 years. I know what happens when good people are pushed past their breaking point. I've taught about soldiers who did unthinkable things because the alternative was worse. About how fear and desperation can warp human nature into shapes that don't fit the people we thought we knew. I needed to see my son. I drove to his house that afternoon. 2800 South Kinnickinnick Avenue, a working-class neighborhood trying to pretend it was something better. Bryce's house sat on a corner-lot modest ranch with a for sale sign that had been up for 8 months. I parked across the street, didn't get out. Just sat there in my blue Civic trying to figure out what I would say. That's when the man walked up the porch steps. Wayne Long. I'd learn his name later, but right then he was just a thick-necked man in his 50s wearing an expensive jacket over a body that screamed enforcer. The kind of man who collects debts that banks won't touch. He moved with the particular confidence of someone who's never been told no and lived. Bryce opened the door before the man could knock, like he'd been watching, waiting. They talked on the porch. The man's voice carried across the street loud enough I heard it through my closed car window. End of December. No more extensions. You understand me? Bryce nodded, shoulders hunched, head down. Submissive in a way I'd never seen my son be. I understand, Bryce said quietly. I'll have it by then, I promise. Promises don't mean anything to me. The man stepped closer. Money does. December 31st. All of it. Or we move to less pleasant collection methods. He left, walked down the steps, got into a black SUV, drove away. Bryce didn't go inside. He just stood there on his porch in the light November rain that had started falling, not moving, not seeking shelter, just standing, arms at his sides, head down. My son stood in the rain like a man already drowning, and I watched from my car knowing I couldn't save him from what he'd already done. How much did he owe? How long had he been in debt to men like Wayne Long? How desperate had he become? Desperate enough to let someone forge my signature. Desperate enough to plan my murder. I sat there watching him for 10 minutes. He never moved, never went inside, just stood in the rain like he'd forgotten how to do anything else. Finally, I put my car in reverse, backed out, drove home. I couldn't confront him, not yet, not until I understood the full shape of what they'd planned, not until I had proof. But I understood now, the pressure, the deadline. End of December, 6 weeks away. 6 weeks to come up with money he clearly didn't have. $800,000 from an accelerated death benefit would solve that problem nicely. I sat in my blue Civic, watching my son stand alone in the November rain, understanding for the first time the true shape of the trap he was in. I have taught students about pressure reaching a point where humans do the unimaginable. I never thought I would have to apply that lesson to my own son. But understanding why doesn't mean I can let it happen. Friday morning, I followed my son to a storage facility and broke into his secrets. The combination lock opened on the third try. My grandson Alex's birthday, November 15th, 2007, and I knew before I stepped inside that I was about to find something I couldn't unknow. Bryce left his house at 8:47 a.m. I'd been parked down the block since dawn, coffee and a thermos notebook on the passenger seat watching. When his car pulled out, I followed at a distance. 3 decades teaching teenagers had taught me how to tail someone without being obvious. He drove west to secure space storage on North 27th Street. Orange concrete building, roll-up metal doors in long rows. I parked 4 aisles over, slumped low in my seat, watched through the rearview mirror. Bryce walked to Unit 247, punched in a code. The orange door rolled up. He disappeared inside. 23 minutes later, he emerged. Even from this distance, I could see it. His shoulders were lower. His walk was slower. He looked like a man who just visited his own grave. He drove away. I waited another 20 minutes, made sure he wasn't coming back. Then I got out of my car, crossed the parking lot, and stood in front of Unit 247 with my notebook in one hand and the certain knowledge that what I was about to do was probably illegal. I didn't care. The combination lock glowed in the weak November sunlight. 4 digits. I had 3 guesses before paranoia would drive me away. 3 tries, I whispered to myself. If the third doesn't work, I walk away and find another way. First try, Bryce's birthday, 0317, March 17th, 1978. The lock didn't budge. Second try, Elaine's birthday, 0622, June 22nd, 1953. Nothing. Third try. Last chance. I thought about my son's face when he emerged from this unit, the way he'd looked broken, the way guilt had made him small. What would he use as a combination? What mattered to him? My fingers moved 1115. Pause. 2007. November 15th, 2007. Alex's birthday. My grandson. The lock clicked. The door opened, and I stepped into my son's nightmare. The unit was small, 10 by 10 feet maybe, concrete floor, concrete walls, single fluorescent light buzzing overhead. Cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and stays there. 3 cardboard boxes sat stacked in the corner. I pulled the door down behind me. Not all the way, left it open, a crack for light and air, but enough that nobody walking by would see inside. Then I turned to the boxes. Box 1. I opened it with hands that were steadier than they should have been. Inside documents. My documents. Copies of my will. The deed to my house. Bank statements going back 2 years. Credit card records. The full life insurance policy from Metropolitan Life. Someone had organized my entire financial life into folders, studied it, analyzed it, known exactly how much I was worth dead versus alive. Box 2. That's when I stopped breathing for a moment. A small glass vial unlabeled. Clear liquid inside. 3 syringes still in sterile packaging. A box of latex gloves. And underneath it all, a spiral-bound notebook with a blue cover. I stared at that vial, at those syringes, at the clinical precision of latex gloves stacked neatly in their box. This isn't spontaneous. This isn't desperation making someone do something terrible in a moment of weakness. This is systematic. Box 3. Photographs. Dozens of them. Printed on regular paper, dated in the bottom corner. Me at the grocery store. September 8th. Me checking my mail. September 12th. Me leaving a doctor's appointment. September 19th. Me at the library. September 24th. Someone had been watching me for months, documenting my schedule, learning my patterns, photographing me when I thought I was alone. I thought of Francine asking Wanda about my routines back in September. This was the follow-up, the verification, making sure the information was accurate before they began. Began what? Later Detective Graves would tell me this was consistent with what forensic psychologists call trophy documentation. Some organized offenders keep detailed records not out of carelessness, but out of a compulsion to control and relive the process. It also served a practical purpose. Francine needed Bryce compliant. A written record of his participation made him equally guilty. It was insurance against him losing his nerve. Just slightly. Enough that the notebook trembled as I opened it. The first page was dated September 15th, 2023. 8 weeks ago. The entry was written in careful, neat handwriting. Day 1. Administered initial dose with morning coffee during weekly Sunday visit. Subject showed no immediate awareness. Left house at 11:47 a.m. Returned home without incident. Will monitor for baseline reaction. I turned the page. Day 3. Subject complained of slight dizziness during phone call. Logged. Dose appears to be within safe initial range. Will maintain current level for 1 week before adjustment. Another page. Day 8. Subject mentioned fatigue to Bryce during Tuesday visit. Good sign, systemic absorption occurring. Increased dose slightly with coffee brought to house. Subject grateful for the visit, unsuspicious. Page after page. Clinical observations. Systematic dosing schedules. Notes about my symptoms, my complaints, my deterioration. Someone had been poisoning me for 8 weeks, and they'd been writing it down like a science experiment. I turned on my phone flashlight, held it over the pages. The handwriting became clearer in the bright light. Careful loops, precise slant, every letter formed with the same measured control. I have seen that handwriting on 17 years of Christmas cards to me, and now I see it documenting my systematic murder. Not Bryce's scrawl. Not my son's hasty, half-legible writing that I'd been reading since he was 7 years old. This was Francine's hand, my daughter-in-law's handwriting. The woman who'd married my son 17 years ago, who'd called me dad at the wedding, who'd sent me birthday cards with those same careful loops, who'd brought me coffee and smiled while asking about my day. She'd written this, every entry, every dose, every clinical observation about how well the poison was working. Day 22, subject canceled lunch, symptoms progressing, Dr. Chambers confirmed his part, documentation in place. Timeline, December target. Dr. Chambers, a name, someone else involved. December target, 6 weeks away. I stood in that cold storage unit under buzzing fluorescent lights holding my daughter-in-law's murder journal and understood. This wasn't Bryce's plan. Francine was the architect, the planner, the one with insurance knowledge and medical connections and the systematic mind to document everything. My son, my terrified, guilt-ridden, debt-crushed son, he was just the one dragged along. The woman who served me pot roast and smiled while pouring wine, she was the one writing increased dose slightly in careful, steady script. She was killing me, and she was writing it down like a recipe. I photographed every page of that journal before I left. 37 entries, 37 days of systematic murder documented in my daughter-in-law's handwriting. I sat in my car with the engine running and the windows fogging, scrolling through the photos on my phone, and that's when I understood I was already dying. First entry, September 15th, 2023. Today is November 13th, almost 9 weeks, 59 days of poison. I scrolled through my texts, found the thread with Dr. Morrison, my physician. October 3rd, 3 weeks in. Experiencing some dizziness, lately unusual fatigue. Should I be concerned? His response, common at your age, stay hydrated, we'll check blood pressure at your next physical in January. It wasn't age, it was poison. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I'd noticed that 2 weeks ago, blamed the cold, the fatigue that made me cancel plans, the dizziness, the strange taste in food, all of it. 56 days of my body breaking down while I thanked Francine for bringing me coffee. I scrolled to the last journal entry. Yesterday, November 12th. Day 56. Subject showing progressive symptoms. Timeline remains on track. Final dose planned for November 28th. Dr. Chambers confirmed availability for certification November 30th. Accelerated benefit claim to be filed December 1st. Total timeline 74 days from initiation to payout. November 28th, 2 weeks away. Final dose. I had 2 weeks to live unless I did something. That evening, I stood in my workshop, the place where I'd taught Bryce to use a lathe when he was 12, where Elaine used to sit and watch me work. I could just let it happen. The thought came unbidden but clear. Make my coffee tomorrow like always. Let November 28th come. Let my son inherit what I have. Let it end quietly. No confrontation, no police, no destroying what's left of my family. I sat on the workshop stool, hands flat on the workbench where I'd built furniture for everyone I loved. My hands were still trembling. I opened the secret drawer in my workbench, the one only I knew about, built 30 years ago. Inside, Elaine's wedding ring, her reading glasses, and a letter. She'd written it 3 years ago, a week before the stroke. Left it with a note, for when you need me, and I'm not there. I unfolded it, her handwriting looser than Francine's warmer. Lawrence, I know you will want to give up when things become too heavy. Don't. Stay for those who need you. You were the best teacher those kids ever had because you never gave up on the ones everyone else quit on. Don't quit on yourself now. Stay. Fight. There are people who still need you. I folded the letter carefully, put it in my breast pocket, looked at the wall. A photo from last year, Liliana and Alec in this workshop laughing. That girl who'd warned me. That boy who called me Grandpa. Would Elaine understand what I was about to do? Would she forgive me for choosing to destroy our son to save myself? But Bryce wasn't the architect. Francine was, and maybe I could still pull my son back. Elaine was right. I needed to stay. For that girl, for my grandson, for the part of my son that wasn't completely lost. I stood up, decision made. At 10:30 that night, I slid into a corner booth at Denny's on South 27th Street. Stanley Gonzalez arrived 3 minutes later, 67 years old, my best friend for 40 years, and retired Milwaukee Police Department detective. He carried himself with the same steady presence he'd had through 4 decades on the force. He sat down, no greeting, just looked at my face and said, "What happened?" I slid my phone across, scrolled through the photos, all of them. He did. Silent, jaw clenching tighter with each image. The documents, the surveillance, the journal. When he finished, he set the phone down carefully. How long? 8 weeks. Started September 15th. You've been to a doctor, thought it was aging, dizziness, fatigue. Dr. Morrison said it was normal. It's not normal. Stanley's voice was flat. Cop voice. Your daughter-in-law is poisoning you, systematically, documenting it like a science experiment. Stanley, this is not the plan of a desperate man. This is the plan of someone who has done this before. He looked at me for a long moment. This isn't her first time. The diner noise faded. All I could hear was my pulse. What? Your daughter-in-law's name is in the MPD system, flagged from a Chicago PD inquiry in 2013. File sealed, but I can see the notation. Stanley pulled out his phone, turned it to show me. Francine Ramsey née Chambers, Chicago investigation 2013. Her uncle, 71 years old, died of apparent myocardial infarction. She inherited $340,000. Chicago PD suspected foul play, couldn't prove it. Case closed, file sealed, insufficient evidence. I couldn't breathe right. She killed before. Chicago thinks so. They just couldn't prove it. Stanley closed his phone. Last time she walked away clean. This time will be different. I will make sure of it. What do we do? You keep living your normal life. Don't confront her. Don't let on that you know. He pulled a napkin from the dispenser, clicked his pen. We need video evidence, audio, proof of administration. I need 48 hours to pull the Chicago file and contact someone in MPD I trust. You need to stay alive and act normal. For 2 more weeks. For as long as it takes. Stanley met my eyes. Can you do that? Can you drink coffee she brings you and smile? I thought of Elaine's letter in my breast pocket. Stay. Fight. Yes, I said, I can do that. We sketched the plan on that Denny's napkin. Cameras, recording, evidence chain. A named Detective Graves, someone Stanley trusted. When I drove home at midnight, Stanley's words kept echoing. This isn't her first time. A 71-year-old uncle in Chicago. $340,000. A sealed file that said insufficient evidence. Last time she got away. This time I wouldn't let her. Saturday morning I woke knowing Francine had killed before. By Saturday afternoon I knew exactly how she'd done it. The text from Liliana came through at 9:47 Saturday morning with 2 attachments, a photo of an insurance file on my son's desk, and 7 words that made my blood run cold. I was making coffee, my own coffee, from beans I'd bought myself brewed in a pot, only I touched when my phone buzzed. Liliana's name on the screen, 2 images, 1 message. The first photo showed a manila folder on a desk. Metropolitan Life Insurance Company letterhead clearly visible. Papers spread out like someone had been studying them. The accelerated death benefit rider I'd seen in the storage unit, but this time photographed in Bryce's home office. The second photo was darker, taken from an angle, like someone holding a phone low, trying not to be seen. The message below read, "Grandpa, they're talking about you like you're already dead. I'm sending you what I saw. Be careful." My hands went cold. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, whispered, "I can't talk long. I'm at your son's house. Came back this morning to get my textbooks. I left them here yesterday. I was walking past the office and heard voices." "What voices?" "Francine and Bryce. The door was cracked open. I shouldn't have listened, but..." Her voice dropped even lower. "Grandpa, she was talking about money, about Wayne Long, about you." "Tell me exactly what you heard." "Francine said Wayne Long called this morning. She said end of December doesn't change. Bryce said they needed more time, and then..." Liliana stopped. I heard her breathing fast and shallow. Then Francine said, "We don't have more time. but the old man does, or rather the old man has what we need. The old man, not your father, not Lawrence, not Dad. The old man, like I was livestock to be slaughtered when the price was right. I took the photos through the door crack, Liliana continued. The insurance file was right there on the desk. I saw your name. I had to warn you. Where are you now? Still here, in the hallway? I'm going to grab my books and leave. Act like I didn't hear anything. Good. Be careful. Don't let them know you were listening. I won't. A pause. Grandpa, I'm scared. For you. I know. Thank you for this. Now go. Get out of that house. She hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone looking at those two photos. My daughter-in-law's careful planning laid out on my son's desk, her voice in my head. The old man has what we need. $800,000 from my accelerated death benefit. That's what I was worth to her. Not a father-in-law, not family, just a number on a spreadsheet. My phone rang at 2 p.m. Stanley. I got the Chicago file, he said without preamble. You need to sit down. I was already sitting. Tell me. Francine Keller. Born Chicago, 1972, married your son in 1995 when she was 21. Her mother died when she was 16. Father was already gone. Raised by her mother's brother, Harold Keller, the uncle who died. September 2013, 71 years old, official cause of death, myocardial infarction, heart attack. Stanley's voice was steady but tight. Francine was the sole heir, inherited $340,000 in liquid assets, plus a Lincoln Park condo worth another $200,000. And Chicago PD investigated. They did. Detective named Morrison, no relation to your doctor, ran the case. Here's what they found. Harold Keller was in good health. Regular checkups, no cardiac history. Then in June 2013, 3 months before he died, neighbors reported Francine started visiting frequently. 2-3 times a week, always bringing food, casseroles, soups, baked goods. My stomach turned, always bringing food, just like Francine brought me coffee. The neighbors thought it was sweet, Stanley continued. A niece taking care of her elderly uncle, until he died suddenly in September. Then one of them called the police, said something felt wrong. What did the autopsy show? Heart failure, consistent with myocardial infarction. But here's the problem. By the time they suspected foul play and ordered toxicology, there was no viable tissue retained. The body had been cremated. Francine's request processed fast. Convenient. Very. Chicago PD built a circumstantial case. Frequent visits with food, sudden death, large inheritance, fast cremation. But without physical evidence of poisoning, the prosecutor wouldn't file. Case was sealed in 2014 with a notation insufficient evidence to prosecute. You teach history long enough, you recognize patterns. This wasn't just similar. This was identical. Visiting an elderly relative frequently, bringing food and drinks, watching them deteriorate, inheriting a large sum, making sure there's no body to autopsy. She'd done this before, to a man who raised her, who took her in when her parents died, who trusted her, and she'd gotten away with it. Stanley, I said quietly, she's doing it again, the exact same playbook. I know. That's why we can't let her finish. His voice hardened. Last time she got away because there was no proof. This time we're going to get proof. Video, audio, evidence that will stand up in court. One more thing, Stanley said, closing his phone. The Chicago file lists her birth name, before she changed it after the investigation closed. He turned the screen toward me. Vanessa Marie Chambers. That's who your daughter-in-law was before she became Francine Keller, then Francine Ramsey. I wrote the name in my notebook. Vanessa Marie Chambers. The name she'd buried. The name she thought nobody remembered. Before November 28th, he confirmed. I'm contacting Detective Priscilla Graves on Monday. She's with MPD Homicide, specializes in family cases. I trust her. We'll need to move fast. I looked at Liliana's photo on my phone screen again. The insurance file on my son's desk. The careful planning. Francine Keller Ramsey had murdered a 71-year-old man in Chicago. Watched him die slowly over 3 months. Walked away with over $500,000. The police had suspected, investigated, built a case, and she'd walked away. Because there was no proof. We're going to get proof this time, I said. Yes, Stanley agreed, we are. I hung up and sat in my living room as November afternoon light slanted through the windows. Somewhere in this city, my daughter-in-law was planning the final stages of my murder. Talking about me like I was already dead. like I was nothing but a financial asset to be liquidated. She'd done this before. She knew exactly how to make murder look like natural causes. Last time she got away, I sat there gripping my phone looking at that photo and understood with absolute clarity I couldn't let her get away again. Not this time. Never again. Sunday night, I learned that stopping Francine wouldn't just mean saving myself. It would mean protecting everyone who'd tried to help me. My grandson's call came at 8:47 Sunday night while I was heating leftover soup, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Grandpa, I've been recording them." I set down the soup pot. "Alec, I've been recording a mom and dad for 3 weeks. His voice was low-tight, speaking from his bedroom probably. Wisconsin is one-party consent. I learned that in civics class. As long as one person in the conversation knows they're being recorded, it's legal. And I'm one of the people in the house, so... You recorded your parents. I left my phone in the living room whenever they talked privately. Pretended I was upstairs doing homework. I have 7 files, Grandpa. Almost 4 hours total. I sat down at the kitchen table. My hands were shaking again. Not from poison this time. From something else. What's on them? Everything. His voice cracked slightly. He was 16 years old, my grandson Liliana's boyfriend, and he sounded like he'd aged a decade in 3 weeks. The first one is from October 23rd. That's when Mom first brought it up. She told Dad about your life insurance, about the accelerated benefit rider she'd added, about Dr. Chambers agreeing to certify you as terminal. What did your father say? Silence for a moment, then he said no. I closed my eyes. He said, "We can't do this to Dad. Mom told him about Wayne Long about the deadline. Dad said no again. There has to be another way." Mom kept pushing. Dad said no a third time. "I can't kill my father." 3 times. My son had said no 3 times. When did he say yes? October 28th, 4th recording. Mom told him Wayne Long had called. Said if they didn't have the money by December 31st, he'd start with Dad's kneecaps and work his way up. That's when Dad broke. Alec's voice was barely a whisper now. He didn't say yes. He just stopped saying no. And Mom took that as agreement. 7 audio files. Evidence from their own mouths. And my son said no 3 times before finally nodding his head. "Can you send them to me?" Already done. Encrypted email. Password is your birthday plus Mom's maiden name. Grandpa, He stopped. I heard him breathing, trying to control it. "I don't know what to do. She's my mom. But she's trying to kill you." "You did the right thing, Alec. You're the bravest kid I know." "I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm destroying my family." "Your mother did that, not you. Never you." We hung up. I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, downloaded 7 audio files that would help put my daughter-in-law in prison and my son right behind her. Evidence, finally actual evidence. But the price of that evidence was a 16-year-old boy recording his own mother planning murder. Monday afternoon, Liliana called me from her car. Her voice was different, scared in a way I'd never heard before. "I went back to get my calculus textbook," she said. "Francine was there. She asked me to help her in the kitchen, just the 2 of us." "What happened?" She closed the door. Didn't even turn around at first, just stood there at the counter with her back to me. Then she said, "You sent a message to Mr. Ramsey about insurance documents." My blood went cold. "What did you say?" "Nothing. I didn't say anything, but she kept talking. She said, 'You think you're protecting someone, but you don't know what game you're playing. You don't understand what's at stake.'" I gripped the phone harder. "Did she threaten you?" "Not me." Liliana's voice broke. "Grandpa?" She turned around and she had this little smile and she said, "Your sister Imogen, she walks home alone every day from Jefferson Middle School, doesn't she? 14 years old. Such a vulnerable age." I stood up from my chair so fast it fell backward. "She threatened your sister." She set down her coffee mug, walked past me to the door, turned back and said, "Enjoy the rest of your day, Liliana." Like we'd been talking about the weather. Liliana was crying now. She smiled when she said it. She smiled. "Where are you now?" "In my car, parked 2 blocks away. I can't go home yet. I can't. Imogen doesn't know any of this. She's just a kid. She walks home from school at 3:15 every day because I have debate practice and can't pick her up. If something happens to her because I tried to help you, nothing is going to happen to Imogen." I said, my voice harder than I'd meant it to be. "I promise you, Liliana, nothing." "How can you promise that you didn't see her face? She meant it, Grandpa. She would hurt a 14-year-old girl to protect this." I had seen Francine's face. For 17 years, I'd seen it across Thanksgiving tables and Christmas mornings, seen her smile while serving pot roast. Seen her hug my son, seen her bring me coffee with those same hands that had poisoned her uncle in Chicago. And now she'd threatened a child. Not just any child, a 14-year-old girl who knew nothing about life insurance or accelerated death benefits or murder. A girl whose only crime was having a sister brave enough to send a warning text. "Listen to me," I said. "Starting tomorrow, someone will be watching Imogen's walk home from school. I'm calling Stanley right now. We're going to make sure she's safe." What if that's not enough? It will be, because we're ending this, soon, before Francine can hurt anyone else. After Liliana hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about my daughter-in-law standing in that same kitchen smiling while threatening a child's safety. Imogen Whitfield walked home from Jefferson Middle School every day at 3:15, alone, carrying a backpack too heavy for her small frame, thinking about homework and friends and whatever 14-year-old girls think about when they don't know someone's marked them as collateral damage. And Francine Ramsey had just put a target on that child's back, with a smile on her face, like she was discussing the weather. Within an hour of Francine threatening a child, my grandson made a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Alec told me later what he saw from the top of the stairs, his mother threatening to harm a 14-year-old girl, her voice calm and measured like she was discussing the weather. He said that in that moment something inside him broke. I believed him. I could hear it in his voice when he called me. Alec told me later what happened, how he'd come downstairs to grab water, how the kitchen door wasn't fully closed, how he'd frozen at the top of the stairs when he heard his mother's voice calm and measured talking to Liliana. He heard every word. "Your sister Imogen, she walks home alone every day from Jefferson Middle School, doesn't she?" He stood there 17 years old listening to his mother threaten a child. And something inside him broke. When Francine walked out of the kitchen, Alec ran, down the stairs out the front door before Liliana even emerged. He was sitting in her car at the curb when she came out, both of them silent, both shaking. Liliana got in the driver's seat, didn't start the car, just sat there with her hands on the wheel. Alec finally spoke. "That was my mom," he said. "My mom just threatened to hurt a little girl. Then he called me." His voice when I answered was barely holding together. "Grandpa, I just heard the whole thing. Mom threatened Liliana. About Imogen. She said Imogen walks home alone from school every day, like a threat." My voice went cold and steady in a way I didn't recognize. "Where are you right now?" "In Liliana's car, outside the house. You two come to my house immediately. Do not go back into that house, ever." "What?" "You heard me, Alec. Get Liliana and drive here now. You don't live there anymore." Silence. Then, "Okay." They arrived 20 minutes later. Alec's eyes were red. Liliana looked like she'd aged a decade since Saturday. I made them sit in my living room, made them tea. They didn't drink, and watched my grandson try to process that his mother had become a monster. "I knew she was planning something," he said quietly. "The recordings, the insurance stuff. But I thought maybe Dad was the one pushing it. Maybe Mom was just—" He stopped. "But she threatened Imogen, a kid who doesn't even know what's happening. My grandson is 17 years old and just lost something that can never be recovered, the ability to see his mother as anything other than what she truly is." Tuesday morning, Stanley called at 7 a.m. "I found something," he said. "Used an old contact in the PI community. Your daughter-in-law hired someone 3 days ago, private investigator named Otis Hoffman. She's having you followed." I sat up straighter. "Following me? Why?" "To verify you don't suspect anything, before they proceed with the final dose. She wants to make sure you're acting normal, not preparing to run or call the police." I thought about the last few days. The gray sedan I'd noticed. The same car in 3 different locations. I'd thought I was being paranoid. What does this Hoffman look like? 52 white male, drives a gray Nissan Sentra, works out of a one-man office on Brady Street, specializes in surveillance and background checks. "I've seen the car," I said. "Gray sedan. It was outside the grocery store on Sunday, then at the library yesterday." "That's him. Don't approach. Don't let on that you know. Just act normal." We hung up. I sat at my kitchen table thinking about being watched, about Francine being so careful, so systematic, that she'd hired someone to make sure her victim didn't suspect. That afternoon, I went for a walk in the park near my house, testing a theory. The gray sedan was there, parked 50 meters away, perfect sight line to the walking path. I could see a figure in the driver's seat, watching. Otis Hoffman sat in his gray sedan 50 meters away. A private investigator Francine had hired 3 days ago to track me and verify I didn't suspect the murder plot before they proceeded with the final dose. I pulled out my phone, called Stanley. "The gray car," I said. "I see it right now, 50 meters behind me in the park." "Don't look at it. Don't approach." "I'm not going to avoid him, Stanley. I want to meet Otis Hoffman, face to face." "That's a terrible idea. If he reports back to Francine that you confronted him, he's going to report something either way. Right now he's watching an old man take a walk in the park acting completely normal. What if I give him something else to report?" "What are you thinking? What kind of person hires someone to watch an old man to make sure he doesn't suspect he's being murdered?" "A person who's done this before. A person who knows that the key to getting away with it is making sure the victim never fights back. A person who's so confident in her system that she pays someone to verify the old man is acting appropriately docile." "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that Francine expects me to be oblivious. Shuffling through my days, drinking poisoned coffee, getting weaker. What she doesn't expect is for me to walk up to her surveillance and introduce myself." "You're going to approach him tomorrow. I'm going to walk right up to his car and have a conversation. Maybe he doesn't know what Francine is really doing. Maybe he thinks he's just checking on a family matter. Or maybe—" I paused, watching the sedan through the trees. "Maybe I can turn him." "That's incredibly risky." "So is waiting for her to administer the final dose while a private investigator confirms I'm not suspicious. We have 12 days until November 28th. Time to stop being prey." Stanley was quiet for a moment. Then, "If you're going to do this, do it in public, somewhere with witnesses, and record everything." "I will." I hung up and kept walking. The gray sedan didn't move, just watched, documenting my routine, making notes for my daughter-in-law about whether I seemed suspicious, whether I was acting normal, whether it was safe to proceed with killing me. They say a tracked beast usually trembles and runs. I've taught students about World War II long enough to know sometimes the best prey is the prey that doesn't know it's being hunted or pretends not to. Otis Hoffman sat in his gray sedan thinking he was watching me. Tomorrow I would walk right up to his car window and introduce myself. Sometimes the boldest move is the one they never see coming. Wednesday morning I walked up to the gray sedan and knocked on the window. By Wednesday afternoon I discovered there were fates worse than death. I called Otis Hoffman's number at 2:15 Tuesday afternoon and said 6 words that made him go silent for 10 full seconds. "I know you're tracking me, Otis." The silence stretched. I could hear him breathing. "Mr. Ramsey," he finally said, voice careful. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Gray Nissan Sentra, 3 days. Sunday at the grocery store, Monday at the library, Tuesday in the park. I'm 68, but I'm not blind." Another pause. "How did you get this number?" "Meet me for coffee. Collectivo on North Farwell, 30 minutes. Come alone." I hung up. He showed up 28 minutes later. I was in the back corner booth when he walked in, recognition flashing across his face. Otis Hoffman looked different at 52 than at 17. Thicker around the middle gray at the temples, lines around his eyes. But I knew him. He slid into the booth, nervous energy radiating off him. "Mr. Ramsey," he said quietly. "It's been 38 years. Class 10B. I sat in the 3rd row by the window. American History, 1987. You wrote a paper on Watergate that I still remember. A minus because your conclusion was weak. A ghost of a smile. You wrote good research, weak thesis, rewrite and resubmit. I rewrote it 3 times. And got an A. We sat there, teacher and former student separated by 4 decades and a surveillance contract. Why are you following me, Otis? He looked down. Your daughter-in-law hired me 3 days ago, $3,000 a week to track your movements report if you seem suspicious. Suspicious of what? She said it was a family matter, that you might be getting confused, that she wanted to make sure you were safe. And you believed her? His jaw tightened. No, I've been doing this 15 years. I know when someone's lying. But she's also threatening to report me over a disputed evidence case from 8 years ago. Chain of custody error. Could cost me my license. Trapped between money and blackmail, just like my son. So you took the job. I took the job. He met my eyes. What's really going on? I showed him the photo of the journal, the poison, the systematic documentation. She's been poisoning me for 8 weeks, planning my murder. You're helping verify I don't suspect before the final dose. The color drained from his face. Jesus Christ. You're helping someone commit murder, Otis. Unknowingly, maybe. But that's what you're doing. He stared at the photos, hands shaking. I had no idea. I know, but now you do. I leaned forward. So here's my question. The same one I asked when we talked about Nixon, about Watergate, about people who knew crimes were happening. Do you want to do the right thing? Otis was quiet for a long moment. You always said that, in class. Do the right thing even when no one is watching. I remember Mr. Ramsey. I haven't forgotten. 38 years of teaching. And in the darkest moment of my life, a former student remembered a lesson I had forgotten that I even taught. What do you need me to do? He asked. Keep taking your money, keep following me, but report back to me. Tell her I'm acting normal. Buy me time. And the blackmail. I have a friend who's retired MPD. We'll handle it. Otis nodded slowly. Okay, I'm in. We shook hands across the table. A lesson from 1987 coming home exactly when I needed it. Wednesday afternoon, I sat in Stanley's office while he went through every file from the storage unit. Computer screen glowing 3 monitors showing different folders. Wait, Stanley said. There's a second folder here, contingency, nested inside another directory. I missed it. He clicked it open. Oh God, he whispered. What? He turned the monitor. A psychiatric evaluation. Official letterhead. Milwaukee Psychiatric Associates. Patient Lawrence James Ramsey. Diagnosis: progressive dementia with acute confusion, memory impairment, declining executive function. Signed Dr. Preston Chambers, MD. The same doctor from the journal. The one who would certify me as terminal. Scroll down. Stanley scrolled. The evaluation listed symptoms: dizziness, fatigue, confusion, memory gaps, difficulty with basic tasks. Every symptom from the journal. Every symptom caused by their poison. Recommendation. Patient requires 24-hour supervised care. Recommend legal guardianship be established immediately to protect patient's assets and welfare. Patient lacks capacity to make financial or medical decisions. They don't need you dead, Stanley said quietly. They just need you declared incompetent. Plan B was worse than murder. If the poison plot failed, they'd use the symptoms the poison caused as evidence of dementia. Get me declared mentally incompetent. Make Bryce my legal guardian. Give him control of everything, house, bank accounts, life insurance. And I'd still be alive, sitting in a nursing home, aware enough to know what was happening, but legally powerless to stop it. Watching them spend my money, sell my house, drain every asset while I sat in a wheelchair. Death would have been kinder. Have you ever met Dr. Preston Chambers? Stanley asked. Never, not once. This evaluation is dated October 30th. 3 sessions documented, says you presented with confusion and memory loss. I've never been to his office, never spoken to him. Complete fraud. Stanley kept scrolling, found another document. Petition for emergency guardianship, already drafted. Bryce Ramsey listed as proposed guardian. All forms filled out, ready to file. They don't need me dead, they just need me insane. And I'd given them 8 weeks of evident symptoms from their poison, documented in their journal, transformed into proof of mental incompetence in a fake psychiatric file. When can they file this? I asked. Anytime, it's ready. If Plan A fails, if you survive or they get cold feet about murder, they pivot to Plan B. Commit, you control, you drain you. I stared at my own fraudulent psychiatric evaluation, a diagnosis from a doctor I'd never met, using symptoms from poison they'd given me, to lock me away while they stole everything I had. Plan B was worse than murder, because I'd be alive to watch it happen. Plan B was worse than death. But knowing that didn't stop it. I had 27 days to make sure it never happened. Otis Hoffman's call came through at 6:40 Wednesday evening with 8 words that turned Plan B from abstract horror into a ticking clock. The profile must be done by December 15th. I was still at Stanley's house when my phone rang, Otis's name on the screen. I followed her this afternoon, Otis said without preamble. Your daughter-in-law, to Dr. Preston Chambers' office on East Washington Avenue. She was inside 40 minutes. You stayed outside. Positioned under an open window, 3rd floor, but the building has a fire escape. I got close enough to record. He paused. You need to hear this. My phone buzzed. Audio file incoming. I put Otis on speaker so Stanley could hear. The recording was muffled, but clear enough. A man's voice. Dr. Chambers, presumably. And the timeline. Then Francine's voice, sharp and impatient. The profile must be completed before December 15th. No delays. I need it ready to file immediately if necessary. That's less than a month. I'm aware. Can you do it or not? I can have it completed by December 10th, but the fee, money isn't the issue. Timing is. The recording ended. Stanley and I sat in his office staring at my phone. December 15th, Stanley said quietly. 27 days from now. She's keeping both options open, I said. Plan A, poison me by late November. Plan B, if I survive or something goes wrong, file the dementia diagnosis by mid-December. Dual timeline. Maximum flexibility, minimum risk. Stanley leaned back in his chair. This is professional level planning. Because she's done it before. Send me the full recording, Otis, Stanley said into the phone. And I need Dr. Chambers' office number. I want to know who else works there, who handles his files, everything. Already on it, Otis replied. Sending now. 27 days. Less than a month to gather enough evidence to stop both plans. To prove the poison, expose the fraud, save my life. The clock was ticking. Thursday morning, I called Alec and Liliana to my house. They arrived at 9, both looking like they'd slept as badly as I had. I sat them down in my living room. On the coffee table between us, 3 wireless cameras Stanley had dropped off at dawn, each no bigger than a smoke detector. Next to them, a small backpack. I'm going to ask to stay at your parents' house for a few days, I said, looking at Alec. I'll tell them I'm anxious, feeling lonely, need company. They'll say yes because they think I'm walking into their trap. Alec's eyes widened. You're going to live with them for 3, maybe 4 days. Long enough to install these cameras and gather video evidence of what they're doing. Where? Liliana asked, leaning forward. Kitchen, hallway, office. I pointed to each camera. Stanley's equipment. Wireless motion-activated feeds to a secure server he controls. High-definition video and audio. They'll see you install them, Alex said. Not if you help me. You still live there. You can move through the house without raising suspicion. I'll distract them, you place the cameras. I looked at the 3 wireless cameras Stanley left on my kitchen table, each no bigger than a smoke detector, and understood this was it. This was the moment, the plan, the risk. Liliana, I continued, you'll watch Imogen. Make sure she gets home from school safely. Otis will continue external surveillance on Francine. Stanley coordinates everything remotely. Silence. I need to be clear, I said. This is voluntary. Both of you. If they discover what we're doing, if they catch Alec placing cameras, or realize I'm not the confused old man I'm pretending to be, there will be consequences. Dangerous consequences. Alec didn't hesitate. Grandpa, you don't need to ask me. I'm in. Alec. I heard Mom threaten a 14-year-old girl. I've been recording their conversations for weeks. You think I'm going to back out now? His jaw was set, determined. I'm in. Whatever you need. I turned to Liliana. She met my eyes, and I saw something there I recognized from 38 years of teaching. The look a student gets when they understand that doing the right thing will cost them something. She threatened Imogen, Liliana said quietly. My sister, that's why I can't back down, not now, not ever. 3 people. A 17-year-old grandson choosing his grandfather over his parents. An 18-year-old girl protecting her younger sister. A 68-year-old retired teacher preparing to walk into his own attempted murder. You teach history for 38 years. You learn that the turning points aren't always loud. Sometimes they're 3 people sitting in a living room saying yes. Okay, I said, here's the full plan. I laid it out. Every detail. The phone call to Bryce. The performance anxious, vulnerable, needing company. The arrival tomorrow. The camera placement over the weekend. The evidence gathering. The extraction plan if things went wrong. Alec took notes on his phone. Liliana asked questions. We went through it twice, then a 3rd time. When we finished, Alec picked up the backpack with the cameras. When do you call Dad? He asked. Tomorrow, noon. Stanley and Otis will be on standby. And if they say no, they won't. Francine wants me close, manageable, easy to dose. She'll convince Bryce to say yes. Liliana stood. I'll start picking Imogen up from school starting today. Won't tell her why. Just say I want to spend more time with her. Good. They left together. Through my window, I watched them walk to Liliana's car, both carrying the weight of what we were about to do. I sat alone in my living room, looking at the empty coffee table where the cameras had been. Tomorrow I would call my son, use an old man's trembling voice to ask if I could stay a few days, sound lonely, vulnerable, afraid. And he would say yes, because Francine would tell him to. I would step into my son's house, sleep under the roof of the person who wants to kill me, or worse, declare me insane, drink the coffee they brew, eat the food they serve, and smile. Smile like a man who suspects nothing while 3 wireless cameras watch every move they make. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is walk straight into the trap and spring it from the inside. Thursday at noon, I walked into the trap. By Thursday evening, I confirmed I was sleeping under the same roof as a serial killer. I dialed my son's number at noon Thursday with Stanley and Otis both listening on conference, and when Bryce answered, I let my voice shake just enough to sound like a lonely old man. "Bryce, it's Dad." "Hey, Dad, everything okay?" I took a breath, made it audible, let the tremor in my voice sound natural. "Son, I haven't been sleeping well these past few nights. The house feels too empty without your mother. I keep waking up at 3 a.m. and just sitting there in the dark." Pause. Let him hear the vulnerability. "Could I stay with you a few days just for the company? I don't want to be a burden, but—" "Of course, Dad." But there was something in his voice, a hesitation, then silence. 3 seconds of silence while my son asked my would-be killer if his father could visit felt like 3 hours. I could picture it. Bryce covering the phone, turning to Francine, the question in his eyes, her response. Bryce came back on the line. That's good, Dad. Really good. Come around 4, we'll have dinner ready." "Are you sure I don't want to impose?" "You're not imposing. It'll be nice. See you at 4. We hung up. My phone buzzed immediately. Text from Otis watching from the gray sedan parked down the block. She nodded when she heard, "She is smiling. They think you're walking right into it." I sat in my kitchen phone still in my hand and let out a breath I'd been holding since the 3-second silence. The performance worked. Francine thought she'd won. Now came the dangerous part. I arrived at 4 p.m. with a small overnight bag. Bryce answered the door, hugged me. It felt stiff, mechanical, like hugging a stranger. "Thanks for having me, son." "Of course, Dad. Your room's ready upstairs. Guest bedroom." Francine appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. Smile perfectly calibrated. Warm but not too warm. Concerned but not overbearing. "Lawrence, we're so glad you're here. I know the house must feel empty." I let my shoulders sag slightly. Played the part. "It does. Thank you both. I won't be any trouble." "No trouble at all," she said, that smile never wavering. "Dinner's at 6. Make yourself comfortable." By 6 p.m. the dining table was perfect. Beef stew in a ceramic pot, steam rising, roasted vegetables glistening with olive oil, fresh bread, still warm butter melting on the side. 2 candles flickering between the serving dishes. It looked like a family dinner. Felt like an execution waiting to happen. We sat. Francine served, playing the perfect hostess, ladling stew into bowls, passing bread, pouring wine. Bryce pushed food around his plate, barely eating, barely speaking, his fork scraped against ceramic in the quiet. Alex sat across from me, eyes down, knowing everything. The recordings on his phone, the cameras in the backpack upstairs, the plan we'd rehearsed that morning. And Francine smiled. Halfway through the meal, I set down my spoon and looked at her. "Did I ever tell you about Mary Ann Cotton?" I asked. Francine's blue eyes met mine. "I don't think so. Who was she?" "Victorian England's most prolific poisoner. 1870s. 21 victims, mostly family members. Poisoned them with arsenic over months, sometimes years." I kept my eyes on her face, watching. "How terrible," she said, reaching for her wine glass. The symptoms were subtle at first: stomach pain, dizziness, fatigue. Doctors blamed natural causes, aging, weak constitution. I took a bite of stew, chewed slowly. She collected life insurance on most of them, her husbands, her children, even her mother. Bryce's fork clattered against his plate. Alec looked up. Francine sipped her wine. "The authorities finally caught her when a doctor grew suspicious of the 3rd child to die in her care. Requested an autopsy, found arsenic levels that would kill a horse." I buttered a piece of bread, still watching her. "They exhumed 7 bodies, all poisoned. She hanged in 1873. "How interesting," Francine said, her voice perfectly level. "The things people are capable of." She set down her wine glass. "More bread, Lawrence?" She asked if I wanted more bread. I'd just described a woman who murdered 21 people with poison. Detailed the symptoms, the same symptoms I'd been experiencing for 8 weeks. Explained the methodology, the investigations, the exhumations, the hanging. And Francine Ramsey asked if I wanted more bread. Not a flinch, not a tremor, not a single muscle in her face changed. Just polite dinner conversation interest, like I'd been discussing the weather or a book she might read. Bryce stood abruptly. Excuse me, I'm not feeling well. He left the table, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. Alec's eyes met mine for just a second. Understanding passed between us. Francine refilled her wineglass. Your father gets these stomach aches, she said to Alec, voice concerned. Then to me, he's been under a lot of stress with work. You know how it is. I do, I said quietly. We finished dinner in near silence. Francine cleared the plates, humming something under her breath. Alec excused himself to his room. I sat at that candlelit table watching my daughter-in-law wash dishes like she hadn't just sat through a detailed description of her own methodology. That's when I knew for certain. Not suspected, not theorized, knew. She'd done this before, in Chicago, to her uncle Harold, and she'd gotten away with it because she was good at it, practiced, calm. She didn't flinch when I told that story about Victorian England's most prolific poisoner, not a tremor, not a blink. Just polite interest and an offer of bread while I described arsenic symptoms that matched what they were doing to me. I looked into Francine Ramsey's blue eyes across that candlelit table and saw nothing. No guilt, no fear, no humanity. Just the cold calculation of someone who'd killed before and would kill again without losing a single night's sleep. She dried her hands on the kitchen towel. I'm glad you're here, Lawrence, she said. The house feels more complete with family around. Thank you for having me, I replied, playing my part. She smiled. Coffee in the morning, I'll have a fresh pot ready at 7. That would be lovely. I watched her walk up the stairs to bed, and I thought about that coffee pot, the one she'd have ready at 7 a.m., the one I'd never drink from. At exactly 11 p.m., I tapped twice on my grandson's bedroom door in the dark house where my son and his wife slept 30 feet away, planning my murder. Alec opened immediately, already awake, dressed in dark clothes. The small backpack sat on his bed, 3 wireless cameras inside. We didn't speak, just nodded. I slipped off my shoes, moved in socks. Alec went barefoot. We stepped into the hallway like shadows. The house was dark, silent. From the master bedroom down the hall, I could hear Bryce's light snoring. Beyond that, nothing. Francine slept without sound like a predator conserving energy. We moved to the kitchen first. Alec pulled out camera 1, no bigger than a smoke detector. Black plastic, tiny lens, motion activated with live feed capability. He climbed onto a chair, reached above the refrigerator, positioned it in the corner with perfect angle toward the counter and coffee maker. I held the chair steady, watched the hallway, listened. Nothing. Camera 2 hallway. Upper corner where the wall met the ceiling. Alex stood on my shoulders, risky but necessary, positioned it facing the bedrooms and office door. Anyone moving through this hallway would be captured. Still no sound from the master bedroom. Camera 3 office. We slipped inside, closed the door most of the way. Alec tucked it behind binders on the bookshelf, lens peeking through with perfect view of the desk where I'd seen the insurance files that first day in the storage unit. 12 minutes total, completely silent. We returned to the guest room. I closed the door, locked it quietly, opened my laptop on the bed. 3 windows appeared on screen. 3 camera feeds all live. Kitchen, hallway, office. Green recording lights in the corner of each frame. Alex sat shoulder to shoulder with me, both of us staring at 3 empty rooms. Now we wait, I whispered. My 17-year-old grandson and I sat in the dark, watching 3 empty rooms on a laptop screen, waiting for his mother to poison his grandfather's coffee. The minutes crawled. 11:15, 11:22, 11:30. Alex's breathing was steady beside me. My own heart hammered. Cameras are motion activated, but we'll watch live tonight, I said quietly. Kitchen, hallway, office. Everything they do. Grandpa, what if they don't do anything tonight? Then we wait another night, but I don't think we'll have to wait long. 11:41, 11:45. I thought about the coffee pot downstairs, the Folgers container, the morning routine Francine had promised. Fresh pot ready at 7 a.m. Before I show you what those cameras captured at 11:47 p.m., if you're still with me, comment A if you think she'll get caught, or B if you think she'll walk away clean, and tell me why in 5 to 10 words. Quick note, the next part includes some recreated details for narrative impact. 11:47 p.m. The kitchen camera screen lit up. Motion detected. Francine entered the frame. Thin robe, hair tied back. Moving with purpose. Alec, I whispered, start recording on your phone too. Back up. He pulled out his phone, aimed it at the laptop screen. On camera, Francine looked around the kitchen, checking, making sure she was alone. She moved to the cabinet above the sink, reached up, pulled down a small glass vial, unlabeled, clear liquid inside, unscrewed the cap, opened the Folgers coffee container on the counter, poured a measured amount from the vial into the coffee grounds, not splashing, not spilling, precise. Then she picked up a spoon from the dish rack, stirred. I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Exactly 15 rotations, methodical, practiced. She closed the Folgers container, screwed the vial cap back on, wiped her hands on the dish towel hanging from the oven handle, returned the vial to the cabinet above the sink, closed the door, looked around one more time, and smiled. She smiled while she did it. A small smile, barely there, but unmistakable. 90 seconds from entering the kitchen to walking out. I clicked manual save, uploaded the file to the cloud immediately, sent a copy to my email, to Stanley's email, to a backup drive. Alec beside me was barely breathing. On screen, Francine walked out of the kitchen like she'd just made herself a cup of tea. Casual, calm, unhurried. I replayed the footage, zoomed in on her hands, steady as a surgeon's. No tremor, no hesitation. The pour was measured. The stirring was exact. 15 rotations, not 14, not 16, 15. She'd done this before, not just with me, not just in the last 8 weeks. This was muscle memory. Grandpa, Alec whispered, his voice shaking. She's smiling. She's actually smiling while she does it. I see it. How can someone... He stopped, couldn't finish. I watched the replay a third time, froze it on the frame where her hands held the vial. Steady, confident, practiced. Those weren't the hands of someone doing this for the first time. Uncle Harold in Chicago, 71 years old, dead of apparent myocardial infarction in September 2013. Francine visiting frequently, always bringing food. He'd seen these same hands, the same small smile, the same methodical precision. He just didn't have cameras. 90 seconds, I said quietly. She did it in 90 seconds. Untrembling hands, a slight smile, 15 exact stirs. I looked at my grandson. He was staring at the laptop screen at the frozen image of his mother holding poison. This is not the first time that hand has done this, I said. Alec didn't respond, just kept staring. I saved 3 more copies of the video, sent them to different email accounts, different cloud services, made sure this evidence couldn't disappear. Because tomorrow morning, Francine would offer me coffee. She'd smile, pour it into a mug, hand it to me with that same calm face she'd shown while stirring poison into the grounds. And I'd have to look her in the eyes and say, "No, thank you. I'm not thirsty this morning." Without letting her know that I'd watched every second of her 90-second performance, that I had it saved in 6 different locations, that her practiced, professional, methodical murder routine was now evidence that would put her away for life. I closed the laptop. "Get some sleep," I told Alec. "Tomorrow we act like nothing happened." How? The same way I sat through dinner while she served me food. The same way you've been living here knowing what they planned. We pretend. He nodded, stood, walked to the door, turned back. "Grandpa, I'm sorry that you had to see that you... Don't apologize. You helped me survive. That's what matters." He left. I sat alone in the dark guest room, laptop closed, thinking about those steady hands, that small smile, 90 seconds. And I understood Francine Ramsey wasn't just a murderer. She was good at it. I had evidence of Francine poisoning the coffee. Within 20 minutes, I'd discover the conspiracy went deeper than family. 8 minutes after watching Francine poison the coffee, the office camera screen lit up, and I saw my son sit down at his desk to write something that made his shoulders shake. 11:55 p.m. The office camera showed Bryce entering the room. He didn't turn on the overhead light, just the desk lamp, warm glow illuminating his face. He sat down heavily, pulled open the desk drawer, removed the spiral notebook, the same blue one from the storage unit, the one with Francine's handwriting documenting my systematic murder. Bryce opened it to a blank page, picked up a pen. His hand was trembling. He wrote slowly. I couldn't read the words from the camera angle, but I watched his hand move across the page, deliberate, painful. Then he laid the pen down, dropped his head into his hands. His shoulders started shaking. My son was crying. Silently, alone in that office, crying over whatever he'd just written. Alex sat rigid beside me, watching his father break down on screen. The office door opened. Francine appeared in the doorway, backlit from the hallway. "Done yet?" she asked, voice flat, no sympathy. Bryce didn't look up. "Done." "Good." She leaned against the doorframe. "Garrett called tonight. Profile B will be ready before the 15th. Bryce's head snapped up. I watched his face go white. "What?" he said. "The profile. Dr. Chambers' backup plan. It'll be ready to file by December 15th if we need it." You said we were just doing the... Bryce stopped, stared at her. "What profile?" Francine's expression didn't change. "The dementia diagnosis, the nursing home option. I told you about this." "No, you didn't." "I must have. Doesn't matter. It's ready if Plan A doesn't work cleanly." Bryce stood up. "Francine, what are you talking about? What nursing home?" "Sit down." "Answer me." "Sit down." Her voice went cold. "You don't need to worry about backup plans. That's my job. Your job was to write the final note in the journal. Did you do it?" Bryce looked at the notebook. At her, back at the notebook. "Yes," he said quietly. "Then we're done for tonight. Go to bed." She walked away. Bryce stood there for another minute staring at nothing before following her out. The office went dark. I watched my son learn in real time that his wife was lying to him even while they conspired to kill me together. "Grandpa," Alec whispered. "Dad doesn't know about Plan B. He doesn't know about the nursing home thing." "No, he doesn't. She's manipulating him." "Yes. Does that make him less guilty?" I thought about my son writing in that journal with trembling hands, crying alone in the dark, saying no 3 times before finally agreeing. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know the answer to that." We sat in silence for several minutes. Then at 12:10 a.m., the kitchen camera lit up again. Francine. She entered the kitchen in darkness, didn't turn on lights, just stood there illuminated by the glow of her cell phone screen, raised the phone to her ear. I turned up the laptop volume. The camera mic was sensitive, but she was whispering. "Finishing this week," she said. "I need the nursing home paperwork prepared before the 15th. Everything ready to file." Pause, listening. "It doesn't matter what he thinks. The profile must be convincing enough to satisfy the insurance company. They need to believe the old man can't manage his own affairs." Another pause. "Good. And the certification?" Listening. "Perfect. Insurance companies won't question a dementia diagnosis from a licensed psychiatrist, not when it's backed by 8 weeks of documented symptoms." She smiled in the darkness. "No, he doesn't know the full scope. Better that way. He's too emotional. Gets cold feet." Pause. "December 15th deadline stands. If we haven't completed Plan A by then, we pivot immediately. I want the guardianship petition ready to file that morning." Another pause, longer this time. "The fee we discussed is acceptable. Half, now half when the policy pays out. Wire transfer, same account as before." She listened for another few seconds. "Understood. I'll see you Friday for the final review." She hung up, stood there in the dark kitchen for a moment, then walked back upstairs. I hit pause on the recording, rewound it, played it again. "Someone in the system is helping them," I said. Alec was staring at the screen. "Who?" "Someone with a medical license. Someone who can sign psychiatric evaluations. Someone who's done this before, same account as before," she said. "They've worked together previously." I pulled out my notebook, the one where I'd been documenting everything. Wrote, 12:10 a.m., Francine phone call, 3rd conspirator confirmed, medical professional preparing fraudulent psychiatric profile and nursing home paperwork, receiving payment wire transfer. Same account as before, prior relationship established, meeting Friday for final review. I looked at Alec. "This isn't just your mother and father. There's someone else. Someone with professional authority preparing documents to declare me incompetent. Someone who will testify in court if needed. Someone the insurance company will believe." "Can we trace the call?" "Stanley might be able to, or Otis, but we need to move carefully. If we spook this person before we have evidence on them too, they'll destroy everything and disappear." I saved the kitchen video, uploaded it to cloud storage, sent copies to 3 different email accounts. 2 videos now. Francine poisoning the coffee. Francine arranging fraudulent medical documentation with a co-conspirator. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Because they weren't doing this alone. Someone with a medical license, someone who could sign psychiatric evaluations that insurance companies accept without question, was preparing documents to erase me from my own life. That midnight phone call, doesn't matter what he thinks profile must be convincing, told me everything. The third person in this web had professional authority, and we needed to find them before we acted, or stopping Francine wouldn't be enough. They'd just find another victim, Another elderly person to slowly erase. Another family to destroy. I closed the laptop. Get some sleep, I told Alec. Tomorrow we figure out who was on that call. How? Stanley has contacts, Otis has resources, and Francine said she's meeting them Friday for final review. That gives us less than 24 hours to identify them. Alex stood, walked to the door, turned back. Grandpa, how many people has she done this to? I thought about Uncle Harold in Chicago, about the same account as before, about the casual professionalism in her voice. I don't know, I said, but we're going to make sure I'm the last. Friday morning, I discovered who was helping Francine. By Friday evening, I learned I'd have to survive one more night before justice could arrive. I sent Otis the trimmed audio clip from Francine's midnight phone call at 7 Friday morning. 3 hours later, his name came back. Dr. Preston Chambers, Otis said. Private psychiatrist, East Washington Avenue. The phone number traces directly to his practice. I was sitting at the breakfast table in Bryce's house, watching Francine make pancakes, like a woman without a single secret. I kept my voice low. You're certain? Voice analysis match, network logs confirmed. I already booked an appointment concerned son, elderly father, declining mental state. He never questioned it. 2 hours later, Otis called back. He walked straight into it, he said. 40 minutes on tape. One-party consent, Wisconsin law. He described the whole process himself, evaluations based on family interviews and existing documentation. Said insurance companies accept these profiles regularly. Never needs to meet the patient directly. A pause. He admitted everything without realizing it. By 2 p.m., I had the fourth piece of evidence. Dr. Preston Chambers in his own voice explaining exactly how he'd signed off on a psychiatric evaluation for a man he'd never once met. Then Liliana called. Grandpa. Her voice was barely holding. They sent something, an envelope, under my door, white, unmarked. I heard her breath catch. It's a photo of Imogen, taken from behind, yesterday. You can see her school uniform, her backpack, the street. She had no idea anyone was there. The kitchen sounds from downstairs felt very far away. Take her to a friend's house tonight, I said. Don't explain, don't frighten her. Just get her somewhere safe and call me when it's done. I'm not scared for me, Liliana whispered. Only for her. I know, we're ending this today. At 7 p.m., Stanley and I sat across from Detective Priscilla Graves in a conference room at Milwaukee Police Department headquarters. 20 years in homicide. She reviewed everything without expression, the camera footage, the audio files, the storage unit photos, the journal. Otis is recording the photo of Imogen. When she finished, she set her pen down. This is solid. Conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, falsification of medical records, threat to a minor. She looked at Stanley. How long have you been building this? 12 days, I said. She almost looked impressed. I need 48 hours. DA sign-off paperwork, coordinated arrests, your son, your daughter-in-law, and Dr. Chambers simultaneously. Saturday morning, 8:25. My stomach dropped. One more night. One more night, she confirmed. Go back to that house. Stay vulnerable. Don't touch anything they prepare. She leaned forward. Can you do that? I thought about Francine's steady hands, Bryce crying alone in the dark, a 14-year-old girl walking home not knowing someone was photographing her from behind. Yes, I said. Stanley dropped me at the curb. I sat in the car one extra moment before getting out. Almost over, he said. I walked to the front door. Francine was cooking. She smiled when I came in. Perfect timing, dinner in 20 minutes. Thank you, dear. I went upstairs, lay on the guest bed, stared at the ceiling in the dark. One more night. 12 hours, then it ends. I closed my eyes and started planning exactly what I would do at 5:30 a.m. before anyone else woke to make sure no one in that house drank poison while we waited for justice to walk through the front door. I survived the night. At 5:30 Saturday morning in the blue pre-dawn darkness, I made my final move. I stand alone in the pre-dawn kitchen at 5:30 a.m. holding the Folgers container that has been killing me for 38 days, and I realize my hands are not shaking. They should be. I'm 68 years old. I've been poisoned for 8 weeks. I'm about to preserve evidence that will send my own son to prison. But my hands are steady. The house is silent. Bryce and Francine sleep upstairs. The kitchen windows show only darkness and the faint blue tinge of coming dawn. I open the Folgers container carefully. The smell hits me. Coffee grounds mixed with something else. Faint. Chemical. The poison Francine stirred in Thursday night while I watched on camera. I pull a gallon Ziploc bag from my jacket pocket, already labeled Evidence, Folgers coffee container, poisoned with antifreeze. November 21st, 2023, 5:30 a.m. I pour the contaminated grounds into the bag, every grain, seal it. The bag goes into my overnight duffel wrapped in a towel hidden at the bottom. From the duffel, I pull out a fresh Folgers container, unopened, bought yesterday. I pour the clean grounds into the old container, close the lid. Anyone looking would see the same red canister that's been sitting there for weeks. But the poison is gone, preserved, evidence. The smell of coffee grounds, once comforting after 38 years of morning routine, now carries the faint chemical tang of antifreeze mixing with Folgers. I seal the Ziploc and that smell is locked away forever. I open my notebook. 38 days of documentation, every symptom, every suspicion, every piece of evidence. I read through it one last time. Day 1, dizziness. Day 8, Liliana's warning. Day 15, storage unit discovery. Day 23, Chicago Uncle Harold. Day 32, camera capture of Francine poisoning coffee. Day 38, today, final evidence preservation. I close the notebook, put it back in my duffel. From my jacket pocket, I pull out a folded letter I wrote last night. I taught history for 38 years at Jefferson High School, Milwaukee. History teaches that those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it, usually in handcuffs. The cameras captured everything. The coffee is preserved. The evidence is secure. Detective Priscilla Graves' Milwaukee PD homicide will arrive at 8:25 a.m. I hope it was worth it, Lawrence Ramsey. I refold the letter, open the Folgers container with clean coffee, place the letter inside, close the lid. When Francine comes down to make breakfast, she'll open this container like she has every Saturday. And instead of poisoned coffee, she'll find my note. I check my watch. 5:47 a.m. 2 hours and 38 minutes until Detective Graves arrives. I go upstairs, pack my duffel completely, shower, dress, come back down at 6:15, sit in the living room with a book, waiting. 6:30 a.m., footsteps upstairs, the shower, Bryce's alarm. 6:42 a.m., more footsteps, lighter, Francine. 6:51 a.m., she comes downstairs in her robe, hair perfect, sees me. Lawrence, you're up early. Couldn't sleep, old man problems. She smiles. I'll make coffee, breakfast in 20 minutes. That would be lovely. She walks into the kitchen. I don't follow. Just sit here, book open, not reading a single word. I hear the cabinet open, the coffee container lifted. Then silence. Complete silence. The sound of paper unfolding. More silence. 10 seconds, 15, 20. I stand up, walk to the kitchen doorway. Francine stands at the counter, my letter in her hands. The Folgers container open beside her. Her face has gone white, completely bloodless. She looks up at me. What is this? Her voice is barely a whisper. Exactly what it says. You... She stops, looks at the letter again, back at me. You know, I've known since November 11th. Liliana warned me. I documented everything. The cameras recorded everything. The coffee you poisoned Thursday night is preserved as evidence. Dr. Preston Chambers' recorded confession is with Milwaukee PD. Your midnight phone calls are on video. I taught the fall of Rome for 38 years. Every empire that collapsed did so the same way. Arrogance made them believe they were untouchable. I'm watching that moment right now in my own kitchen on a Saturday morning in November. Francine's hands start shaking. The letter trembles. For the first time in 38 days, I watch her composure shatter. You can't, she starts. Stops. Bryce didn't. It was my idea. He didn't. I know. He said no 3 times before you broke him. I have that on audio, too, from Alec's recordings. Her face changes, understanding dawning. Alec, your son has been recording you for 3 weeks. Wisconsin one-party consent law. Every conversation is admissible. She sets the letter down, her hand shaking badly now. The mask she's worn so perfectly, the caring daughter-in-law, the concerned wife, the gracious hostess is cracking, falling away. Underneath is fear, raw, genuine fear. Chicago, I say quietly. Uncle Harold Keller, 2013, they're reopening that case too. Detective Graves contacted Chicago PD. They're retesting preserved tissue samples. Francine's knees buckle. She catches herself on the counter. No, she whispers. No, that was ruled they closed. Insufficient evidence, because you had him cremated before they suspected, but they kept tissue samples, and antifreeze poisoning leaves traces. She looks up from the note, her face drained of color, and opens her mouth to speak. I check my watch, 8:04 a.m. Detective Graves said they'd arrive at 8:25. I walk past Francine to the coffee maker, pour myself a cup of the clean coffee I prepared at 5:30 this morning, the coffee that won't kill me. Sit down at the kitchen table to wait. 21 minutes until the police arrive. 21 minutes until my son goes to prison. 21 minutes until justice for Uncle Harold, for me, for every person Francine Ramsey would have killed if I hadn't stopped her. I take a sip of clean coffee, and I wait. 21 minutes felt like 21 hours. Then I heard Francine run. 21 minutes after I sit down with my clean coffee, I hear Francine's footsteps sprint up the stairs and her voice crack through Bryce's bedroom door. "He knows everything, we have to go now." I stay seated at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, listening. Muffled voices upstairs. Bryce's voice, sleep-rough and confused. Francine's sharper, urgent, panicked. Then footsteps, multiple, coming into the hallway. "We don't have time," Francine's voice carries down the stairs. "Pack a bag. We leave in 5 minutes." "Francine, what are you?" "He knows, your father knows everything. The cameras, the coffee. He's got evidence. We have to go before the police." "Mom." Alec's voice, quiet, from his bedroom doorway. Silence. I stand up slowly, walk to the bottom of the stairs, look up. Alec stands in the hallway, 17 years old, red swollen eyes. He's been crying, probably all night. Bryce sees his son, sees the tears, sees the way Alec is looking at him. Not with anger, with something worse. Disappointment. Bryce stops moving, just stands there in the hallway, one hand on the banister, looking at his son. "Alec," he says quietly, I know, Dad. I heard everything. I've been recording you for 3 weeks. Francine's face goes white. "What?" "Wisconsin one-party consent." Alec's voice is steady now. "I'm a resident of this household. Every conversation is legal evidence." Bryce sits down, right there on the stairs, just sits, drops his head into his hands. "Bryce, get up." Francine grabs his arm. "We can still—" "Vanessa, stop." His voice is flat, dead. "I'm not running anymore." Francine freezes. "What did you call me?" "Vanessa. That's your real name, isn't it, before you changed it after Chicago, before you married me? Vanessa Keller. I taught adolescent psychology for 6 years, before switching to history fight-or-flight crystallizes between ages 7 and 9. I'm watching that moment frozen in a 45-year-old man who never grew past it." Francine lets go of his arm, backs away. You knew. I've known for 5 years, since Wayne Long ran a background check before he gave me the first loan. He found the Chicago file, showed me, said he'd keep it quiet if I stayed current on payments. And you never said anything. I loved you." Bryce looks up at her, his face is wet. "I thought if I was good enough, if I fixed the money problems, if I gave you what you wanted, maybe you'd stop being whoever you were in Chicago. Maybe you'd just be my wife." Francine stares at him for 3 seconds. Then she runs. Down the stairs, past me, toward the back door. She makes it to the kitchen, yanks open the back door. 2 Milwaukee PD officers stand on the back porch, weapons drawn. "Ma'am, step back inside the house." Francine slams the door, spins, looks at the front door. It opens. Detective Priscilla Graves walks in. Mid-40s, sharp eyes that have seen too many family murders. Behind her, 3 more officers. And Stanley, my friend, my retired detective friend who helped me build this case. "Bryce Ramsey, Francine Ramsey," Graves says, voice calm and official. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder." 2 officers move to Bryce, still sitting on the stairs. He doesn't resist, just puts his hands behind his back, lets them cuff him. Francine fights. Screaming, thrashing, it takes 2 officers to restrain her. "You coward!" she screams at Bryce. "You weak, pathetic coward! I'm not going down for this!" Bryce doesn't look at her, doesn't respond, just stares at the floor. Graves approaches me. "Mr. Ramsey, are you all right?" "I'm fine." "We'll need you to come downtown for a full statement, and we'll need the physical evidence, the coffee grounds, the notebook, everything." "It's in my duffel, upstairs, guest room." An officer goes to retrieve it. Stanley walks over, puts a hand on my shoulder. "You did good," he says quietly. "This is over." I watch the officers process the evidence. The Ziploc bag with poisoned coffee, the SD cards from the cameras, my notebook, the photos, the audio files from Alec's phone. The evidence bags pile on the dining table like 38 days of slow death made tangible each Ziploc a day I should have died, but didn't. Alec comes downstairs, walks past his mother being cuffed, stops in front of his father. Bryce looks up at him, opens his mouth, closes it, no words come. Alec just nods, once, then walks to me, stands beside me. "Grandpa," he says quietly, "can I stay with you?" "Yes," I say, "of course." They lead Francine out first, still screaming, still fighting, threatening the officers, threatening me, threatening Bryce. Then they bring Bryce to the front door. He stops, turns back. Not to Francine in the patrol car, not to Alec standing beside me. He looks directly at me. His face is wet with tears. His hands are cuffed behind his back. And in his eyes, I see something I haven't seen in decades. Fear. Pure childhood fear. I see the 7-year-old boy who watched his mother get arrested in 1986, who learned that day that hiding was safer than facing anything, who spent his whole life running from consequences until he finally ran straight into the worst decision he'd ever make. He opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. "Dad," he whispers, "I'm sorry." I don't respond, just nod once. Acknowledgement. Not forgiveness. They load him into the patrol car. As they load Bryce into the patrol car, he turns back one last time. Not to Francine screaming threats at the officers, not to Alec crying on the porch. He looks directly at me, and I see it the same terrified 7-year-old boy who watched his mother arrested in 1986, who learned that day that hiding was safer than facing anything. He never learned anything else. The patrol cars pull away. I stand in the driveway. Alec beside me, Stanley on my other side, watching the red and blue lights disappear down the street. 45 years of family history. Gone in 21 minutes. The patrol cars pulled away at 8:41 a.m., red and blue lights fading down Juneau Avenue like dying embers. Stanley stood to my left, hands in his coat pockets. Alec stood to my right, silent, watching his parents disappear. I wanted to say something grandfather-worthy about justice or healing or moving forward, but the words felt hollow before they reached my tongue. Then Francine's voice cut through the morning air. "Lawrence." I turned. Detective Graves had paused at the second patrol car, hand on Francine's shoulder as she twisted in the back seat, face pressed against the window. The glass muffled her words, but I could read her lips. "You don't know everything." Graves opened the door 6 inches. "Ma'am, I strongly advise—" "Let her speak," I said. Francine stepped halfway out, wrists cuffed behind her back hair disheveled from the arrest. Her eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "You think this is over? You think you solved everything?" "I think," I said slowly, "that attempted murder and insurance fraud will keep you occupied for the next 20 to 30 years. Her laugh was sharp bitter. "Chicago, Lawrence. Ask him about Chicago." Bryce's head snapped up in the first patrol car, visible through the rear window. Even from 20 feet away, I could see his face go white. 12 years ago, I said, meeting her gaze. November 2011, Vanessa Chambers. I already know. The color drained from Francine's face in 2 seconds. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "How?" "Your husband called you Vanessa yesterday at 3:17 p.m. I pulled out my phone, showed her the timestamp on Alec's recording. I had a P. I run the name through Chicago databases. Vanessa Marie Chambers wanted for embezzlement and identity theft. $340,000 from Lakeside Community Bank. You thought Bryce was your insurance policy. Turns out he was documenting your confession for leverage." Pattern interrupt. The human brain processes shock in stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Francine's face cycled through all 5 in 11 seconds, a masterclass in psychological collapse. She sagged against the car door. Graves caught her elbow, guided her back into the seat. The door clicked shut. Through the window, I watched her lips form one word. I didn't answer. The patrol car pulled away. "Grandpa." Alec's voice was small, younger than 16, had any right to sound. I turned and he stepped forward, arms wrapping around my chest in a hug that felt like apology and gratitude and grief all compressed into one moment. He didn't say anything else. Neither did I. Sometimes silence carries more weight than words ever could. We stood like that for maybe 40 seconds. When he pulled back, his eyes were red-rimmed but dry. "What happens now?" "Now," Stanley said, "your grandfather files a victim impact statement, cooperates with the DA, and lets the system do its job." "And me?" I squeezed his shoulder. "You did the right thing. That recording saved my life. Whatever happens next, you're not alone. A silver Civic pulled up to the curb. Otis Hoffman, my P. I, 52 years old, former student from my 1987 American History class. He climbed out, walked over with his characteristic unhurried gait, and gave me a single nod. No words. Just acknowledgement between two men who understood that some victories taste like ash. Got the Chicago file sent to Detective Graves, Otis said. Warrant's already out for Vanessa Chambers. They'll add it to her charges here. She'll flip on Bryce, Stanley said. Classic prisoner's dilemma. First one to talk gets the better deal. Otis tilted his head. My money's on Bryce. He's got recordings and he's weaker. Francine will lawyer up in Stonewall. Twist. I thought about Bryce's terrified eyes in the patrol car. Stanley and Otis saw a weak man ready to betray. I saw something else, a 7-year-old boy watching his mother walk away again, except this time she wasn't coming back. 45 years later, he was still that child, still looking for someone to save him. Let them fight it out, I said. I'm done being their target. Otis nodded again, shook my hand, and left. The street fell quiet, no sirens, no shouting, just November wind rustling dead leaves across the driveway. Stanley excused himself to make phone calls to his former MPD colleagues. Alec went inside to text Liliana. I stood alone on the porch, staring at the spot where Francine's coffee cup had sat 3 hours earlier, and pulled out my phone. Liliana answered on the second ring. Mr. Ramsey. It's over, I said. They're in custody, both of them. Her exhale was shaky, relieved. Alec texted me. Is he okay? He will be. What about Imogen? Pattern interrupt. Imogen Brandt, Bryce's girlfriend, 19 years old, studying early childhood education at UW Milwaukee. She'd unknowingly dated a man conspiring to murder his father-in-law. The guilt would follow her even though she bore no blame. She's at my apartment, Liliana said. She knows they got arrested, but not why. I didn't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth. She deserves that. But also tell her this isn't her fault. What if she doesn't believe me? Then she's smart. It'll take time. I paused. Thank you, Liliana. For protecting Alec, for sending that insurance photo. You didn't have to get involved. He's my best friend, she said simply. Of course I did. We hung up. I slipped the phone into my pocket and looked at the house. Same cream siding, same red door, same porch, where I'd sat every morning for 6 years. Everything looked identical. Everything felt different. Twist. The poison was never the real danger. The real poison was realizing that the woman who'd called me Dad for 17 years had looked at me and seen only dollar signs. That the son I'd welcomed into my home had calculated my death like a business transaction. Oleandrin could kill me in hours. That truth would take years. Alec opened the front door. Grandpa, you coming in? Yeah, I said, I'm coming. I walked inside, closed the door behind me, and wondered how long it would take before this place felt like home again. But as I passed the kitchen table where Francine's murder journal had once hidden in plain sight, I couldn't shake one final question if Bryce testifies against her to save himself, and she retaliates by exposing everything he's done. Who really wins when a family destroys itself from the inside out? 2 weeks after the arrest, Detective Graves walks into the hospital room where I'm recovering from antifreeze poisoning and says, Chicago just reopened a 12-year-old murder case. I set down the cup of apple juice, the only thing that doesn't taste like metal anymore, and meet her eyes. Francine's uncle, Harold Chambers, died November 2011, ruled natural causes at the time. Graves pulls a chair to my bedside, sets a manila folder on the tray table. Your comment during the arrest, Chicago 12 years ago, I followed up. Chicago PD pulled the sealed file. The sister Harold's sister Patricia never believed the natural causes ruling. She pushed for an autopsy, got tissue samples preserved. Stanley appears in the doorway, 2 coffees in hand. He's visited every day since they moved me out of ICU. They retested. Yesterday. Graves opens the folder, slides a toxicology report toward me. Exact same antifreeze-based poison composition. Same ratios, same degradation markers. Either it's the wildest coincidence in forensic history, or Francine practiced on her uncle before she tried it on you. The words on the page blur slightly. My vision's still recovering, but I can read the highlighted section, ethylene glycol metabolites consistent with chronic low-dose exposure over 6 to 8 weeks. He left her nothing in the will, I say quietly. She told me once years ago that her uncle promised to help with Alec's college fund but changed his mind at the last minute. I thought she was just venting. Stanley sits in the second chair, hands me one of the coffees even though I'm not supposed to have caffeine yet. The smell alone, rich, dark, nothing like the poisoned Folgers, grounds me in the present moment. Patricia Chambers has been waiting 12 years for this call. Graves made it this morning. What's the charge? First-degree murder, Illinois. Graves taps the folder. Mandatory life without parole if convicted. Milwaukee's case is attempted murder fraud conspiracy, 20 to 30 years. Chicago's case puts her away permanently. I lean back against the pillow, feeling the IV tug in my left arm. The irony settles over me like a weighted blanket. Francine tried to kill me for insurance money, and in doing so, she triggered the investigation that will convict her for the murder she thought she'd gotten away with. Twist. I didn't mention Chicago randomly during the arrest. I knew that if Graves heard the city name connected to Francine's past, she'd investigate. Otis had found the sealed file 3 days before the arrests. Harold Chambers' suspicious death sister's formal complaint ignored. I planted the seed, deliberately betting that a good detective wouldn't let it go. I was right. When does Chicago file? Grand jury convenes January 8th. Graves closes the folder. They're coordinating with Milwaukee DA. Francine will face both trials, ours first, then extradition to Illinois. Stanley sips his coffee, eyes on the window. Patricia wants to testify. She's 71 now, same age Harold was when he died. She told Graves she's been carrying his ashes for 12 years, waiting to bury him properly once someone was held accountable. The room falls quiet. Outside, December snow drifts past the fourth-floor window, soft and silent. I think about Patricia Chambers, a woman I've never met, carrying grief and ashes for over a decade, and I realize how close I came to making Alec carry mine. Pattern interrupt. I taught a unit on criminal justice reform in 2019, wrongful convictions, cold cases reopened by DNA evidence, the importance of preserved samples and persistent families. I assigned readings about victims' relatives who refused to let cases go cold, who pushed for years until someone listened. I never imagined I'd be the cold case that solved another cold case, or that my attempted murder would give another family their long-delayed justice. What about Bryce, I ask. Graves exchanges a look with Stanley. ADA wants him to testify. She's offering a deal. Mid-December, I'm discharged from the hospital with a prescription for kidney support medication and instructions to avoid anything containing ethylene glycol for the rest of my life. The irony of that warning isn't lost on me. Milwaukee County Courthouse courtroom, 7B. I sit in the gallery next to Alec, who's missed 2 weeks of school and looks older than 16, has any right to look. Stanley sits to my right. Assistant District Attorney Sybil Yates calls Bryce Ramsey to the stand. Yates is 52, 28 years prosecuting family violence cases in Milwaukee County with a 91% conviction rate and a reputation for offering deals only when the testimony is worth more than the sentence. Bryce walks to the stand in county jail, orange wrists, shackled eyes down. He doesn't look at me, doesn't look at Alec. Yates stands at the prosecution table, hands folded. Mr. Ramsey, you've signed a cooperation agreement with this office. Please explain the terms to the court. 15 years, Bryce says, voice hoarse. If I testify truthfully against my wife, otherwise life. And whose idea was the conspiracy to poison Lawrence Ramsey? My wife proposed it. I objected 3 times. I should have called my dad. The courtroom is silent except for the court reporter's fingers on the stenotype. Alec's hand finds mine, squeezes once. Why didn't you call him Mr. Ramsey? Bryce finally looks up, eyes finding me in the gallery. Because I've been hiding from my father my whole life. Pattern interrupt. Watching your son testify against his wife to avoid dying in prison is like grading an essay where every sentence is technically correct, but the thesis is 45 years too late. The facts are accurate. He objected, he knew it was wrong, he participated anyway, but the conclusion that matters, the one that says, I chose differently, never appears. After the testimony, Stanley hands me a manila envelope outside the courtroom. MPD found this in the storage unit, thought you should have it. Inside a handwritten letter, Bryce's familiar slanted cursive dated October 2023. Dad, I need to tell you something about Francine. The sentence ends there. Incomplete. Never sent. Twist. He almost warned me. 1 month before the first poisoned coffee, Bryce sat down and started writing the truth. Then he stopped, folded the letter, hid it in a storage unit, and chose silence. If he'd finished that sentence, if he'd mailed it, called me, knocked on my door, none of this would have happened. I fold the letter back into the envelope and place it in my breast pocket next to the note I wrote to Liliana before I started documenting the poisoning. 2 letters, both incomplete, both written by men trying to protect family from the truth. The difference is I finished what I started. But finishing isn't the same as closure. There's still one more conversation I have to have. The courtroom is standing room only when Judge Roland Hartley pronounces 3 sentences that will echo through my family for the next 15 years or longer. That conversation I needed. It happens here, Milwaukee County Circuit Court, Courtroom 4, December 28, 2023. Alex sits to my left, Stanley to my right. The 2 letters rest in my breast pocket. Judge Roland Hartley, 61, 19 years presiding over Milwaukee County criminal cases known for proportional sentences and zero tolerance for family violence, sits behind the bench, reading glasses perched on his nose. The courtroom smells like old wood and stale coffee. Francine stands first, flanked by her public defender. Orange jumpsuit wrists, shackled hair pulled back. Her face is blank. Francine Marie Ramsey. Judge Hartley begins, voice carrying through the silent room. You have been found guilty of attempted first-degree intentional homicide, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. You treated a 68-year-old retired teacher like a spreadsheet number to be erased for inheritance math. You poisoned him slowly, deliberately over weeks while sitting at his breakfast table and calling him Dad. He pauses. Francine doesn't blink. The state of Wisconsin sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Additionally, you will be extradited to Illinois to face first-degree murder charges in the death of Harold Chambers. You are remanded to custody immediately. No reaction. The bailiff leads her away. She doesn't look at me, doesn't look at Alec, doesn't look back. Dr. Preston Chambers is called next. The physician who sold medical access for $15,000 stands with his attorney wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. He's 54, 30 years in family medicine, about to lose everything. Dr. Chambers. Judge Hartley says, disgust beneath the professional tone, you enabled attempted murder by falsifying medical records and prescribing medication under false pretenses. You betrayed every oath you took. The Wisconsin Medical Examining Board has voted unanimously for permanent license revocation. You will never practice medicine again. 5 years probation. If you violate terms, you will serve the suspended 10-year sentence in full. Twist. 30 years of medical practice, thousands of patients, hundreds of diagnoses, decades of expertise erased in one gavel strike. Dr. Chambers will live the rest of his life as the physician who sold his integrity for the price of a used car. The money's been seized as proceeds of crime. He walks out with nothing but a criminal record and destroyed legacy. Bryce is called last. My son stands shackled, eyes down. He's lost weight in county jail, face-gaunt, shoulders slumped. Bryce Michael Ramsey. Judge Hartley says you had 3 chances to call your father and warn him. You chose silence. You participated in planning surveillance and conspiracy to commit murder. Your cooperation with this court is the only reason you're not standing here facing life imprisonment. 15 years eligible for parole after 8. You are remanded to custody. Bryce nods once. The bailiff leads him away. In the gallery, 3 rows back, Otis Hoffman catches my eye. He nods one final acknowledgement and slips out. I won't see him again. The case is closed. The case is... Pattern interrupt. I taught ethics and morality as an elective in 2015, Justice Theory Restorative Practices. The difference between punishment and healing. I taught that justice and healing aren't the same thing. One happens in a courtroom decided by a judge, formalized in sentencing documents. The other takes decades if it happens at all, and no gavel can make it arrive faster. Alec's hand finds mine as we stand. His palm is sweaty, trembling. Do we go now? One more thing, I say quietly. Your father asked to see us just once. You don't have to go. He looks up at me, 16 years old, but eyes much older. Will you? Yes. Then I will too. Milwaukee County Jail visitation room 30 minutes later. Glass partition, black telephone handsets, metal stools bolted to concrete. The room smells like industrial cleaner in desperation. Alex sits beside me. We wait. Bryce appears on the other side in orange, escorted by a guard. He sits, picks up the phone. I do the same. Alec leans close to hear. "Thank you for coming," Bryce says. His voice sounds tinny through the phone, distant. "We won't be coming back," I say. "Not cruel, just honest." Bryce nods, eyes on Alec. "I understand you won't come back. I don't deserve you to." Alec's jaw tightens. He doesn't speak. There's nothing to say that hasn't already been said in courtroom testimony and sentencing statements. Bryce's gaze shifts to me. "Can you forgive me?" The question hangs between us, separated by bulletproof glass and 15 years of choices. I think about the draft letter in my pocket, the one that starts, "Dad, I need to tell you something about Francine," and ends mid-sentence. I think about the 3 times he objected but participated anyway. I think about 45 years of hiding. Pattern, interrupt. If you're wondering whether a 16-year-old should visit his father in jail, so am I. But Alec asked to come, and I've learned that sheltering children from truth just teaches them to lie. He recorded his parents conspiring to kill me. He sent evidence to police. He's already been forced to grow up too fast. The least I can do is let him see this ending with his own eyes. "I don't know," I say finally, "but I will try." Twist, I don't offer absolution or condemnation. "I will try" acknowledges that forgiveness isn't a binary decision made in a jail visitation room. It's a process, maybe lifelong, and I'm committing to the work without guaranteeing the outcome. It's the most honest answer I can give, and the only one that doesn't feel like another lie added to a family built on deception. Bryce closes his eyes, nods once. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you." I hang up the phone. Stand. Alex stands with me. We walk toward the exit without looking back. The guard buzzes us through the first door, then the second. December cold hits us outside, sharp, clean biting. Alex's hand slips into mine. He doesn't cry, doesn't ask when we're coming back. He just looks up and says, "Grandpa, can we go home now?" Home, he said home. Not his house, not his parents' house, mine. Some endings are just beginnings wearing different clothes. 1 month after the arrest, my workshop smells like sawdust and walnut oil again, and I realize this is the first time in 38 days I've felt safe in my own house. Home became real in the weeks after sentencing. Not all at once, but gradually, cup by cup, morning by morning, the house stopped feeling like a crime scene and started feeling like the place where Alec and I were building something new. Late December afternoon, golden winter light slants through the workshop window. Alex stands at the workbench, sanding a curved armrest with long, careful strokes. I taught him to sand with the grain 3 weeks ago. He's gotten good at it, patient, methodical. "How's this?" He runs his palm across the wood. I inspect his work fingers, tracing the walnut surface. "Perfect. Ready for oil." The workshop door opens. Liliana steps in, cheeks pink from December cold, carrying 2 coffees from Collectivo. She hands me one regular drip black safe and keeps the other. "Hey, Alec," she says. "You actually learning something, or is he just making you do all the hard work?" Alec grins. "Both." She laughs, and the sound fills the workshop with something remarkably like normal. She's visiting more often now, checking on Alec, supporting Imogen, realizing that family isn't always defined by blood. "So," she says, sipping her coffee, "I'm thinking about law school. Is that crazy?" I set down my coffee, meet her eyes. "You'll be a good lawyer." "How do you know?" "Because you aren't afraid to do the right thing when no one is watching." She blinks, looks away, nods once. The coffee tastes like warmth and safety, nothing like the metallic poison aftermath that lingered for weeks. Pattern, interrupt. Building a rocking chair with a 16-year-old who just lost both parents to prison is like teaching history after a war. You're not just making furniture or covering curriculum, you're teaching that broken things can be made whole again. Every mortise and tenon joint, every sanded edge, every coat of oil says, this is how you take damaged materials and turn them into something that holds weight without breaking. "Liliana," I say, "come see what we built." She walks to the corner where the walnut rocking chair sits, finished except for final oil. The curves are clean, the joints invisible, the runners balance perfectly. She circles it slowly, eyes tracking the craftsmanship the way I taught her years ago. She runs her hand along the armrest, tests the back slats, checks the rocker curvature. "It's beautiful," she says quietly. "Check the joints," I tell her. "I taught you better than to trust surface finish." She smiles. Niels flips the chair to inspect the base joinery. That's when she sees it. The inscription carved into the underside of the seat, small letters burned into walnut. For the girl who saved her future grandfather's life. L.R. December 2023. She stands completely still, chair tilted in her hands, reading the words twice. When she looks up, her eyes are wet. Grandpa. The word breaks something open in my chest. She's called me that before, casual and joking, but this time it lands different. Twist. The inscription isn't metaphorical. Liliana saved my life not by discovering the poisoning or sending the insurance photo, but by trusting me enough to leave when I asked. If she'd stayed, if she'd argued or delayed, Francine would have known I was on to her. Liliana gave me freedom to gather evidence by believing I knew what I was doing. Trust, it turns out, is its own form of rescue. You left when I asked, I say quietly. You trusted me. That's what saved me. She sets the chair down, carefully crosses the workshop in 3 steps, and hugs me without speaking. Alec watches from the workbench, half smiling, and I realize this is what family looks like after it's been rebuilt from ruins, imperfect, chosen, held together by something stronger than blood. Evening arrives. Liliana and Alec leave together. She's driving him to pick up textbooks for spring semester. The workshop falls quiet except for the tick of the wall clock. I sit at the workbench and open my documentation notebook one final time. The pages are filled with dates, symptoms, observations, evidence logs. I write the last entry, December 30th, 2023, final entry. The poisoning stopped 38 days ago. The healing hasn't. I close the notebook and place 2 letters on the workbench. The first, a note my wife Elaine wrote me 43 years ago telling me she loved me even though I drove her crazy documenting everything. The second, Bryce's incomplete draft from October 2023, starting, Dad, I need to tell you something about Francine, and ending mid-sentence. Pattern interrupt. I taught world history for 38 years, and the lesson was always the same. Cycles repeat until someone chooses to break them. Bryce grew up watching his mother leave, learned to hide from consequences, taught himself that silence was safer than truth. Alec is 16 years old and calling my house home. He's choosing differently. The cycle broke. I look at the 2 letters side by side, one finished, one abandoned, and I understand something I couldn't before the arrest. Twist history teaches that humans can become worse than we imagine and also better than we hope. Sometimes the same person contains both. Bryce was the son who almost warned me, and the son who stayed silent. The husband who objected 3 times, and the husband who participated anyway. The father who asked if I could forgive him, and the father serving 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder. He isn't one thing or another. He's both. And maybe that's the hardest truth, that the people who hurt us aren't monsters, just humans who made catastrophic choices and have to live with them forever. I stand, stretch watch. December sunset, paint the workshop walls, amber and gold. Tomorrow, Alex starts spring semester at Jefferson High School. Liliana will visit Sunday with Imogen. Life doesn't wait for you to finish healing before it asks you to keep living. I turn off the workshop light and close the door. Some stories don't end, they just teach you how to begin again. And to you listening to my story, remember this. I taught history for 38 years. But I never learned the most important lesson until I was 68 years old. Trust is earned, not inherited through marriage vows or breakfast table routines. I trusted Francine because she was family. I ignored the warning signs because I didn't want to believe someone I loved could look me in the eye and plan my death. Don't make that mistake. If you feel something is wrong, if the coffee tastes metallic, if someone asks questions they shouldn't need answers to, if your body is breaking down and doctors can't explain why, document everything. Write it down. Save the evidence. Trust your instincts even when your heart says you're being paranoid. I believe God gave me the teaching background that saved my life. 38 years of documenting lesson plans taught me how to document a murder conspiracy. Family betrayal revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's about protecting yourself and the ones who are still worth saving. If this story made you think, drop a comment below and tell me, was I right to pursue family betrayal revenge, or should I have walked away and let it go? If you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to Dad's Silent Revenge. Your support means everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. It means more than you know. One final note, some details in this story have been fictionalized for narrative purposes and to protect privacy. The lesson about recognizing family betrayal and choosing revenge through evidence rather than emotion, that part is real.